doesn't mean it's not complex. It's just simple. It's simple within its complexity. Its complexity is its simplicity. Do you understand what I'm saying?
It's okay. Did you smoke something?
Hey McFly, I thought I told you to subscribe to Sarcasmaholic Cinema. That's it. That's all I can do.
I think this is like the fifth iteration of the intro. Like we were going.
Yeah, I tried to do this like 5 times, and it's like I spent way too much time working on this than I needed to. We're not making a good first impression. We should probably introduce our audience to this. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of our new film discussion, analysis, whatever podcast, Sarcasmaholic Cinema, the only film discussion and analysis podcast where we're drunk off our own sarcastic assholery. My name is Timmy Lee, the non-white one of the group, and I'm joined as always by the doc to my Marty and the white one of our podcast, Zander. Say hi, Zander.
Hi, Zander.
Great. So for anyone who's like new to this show, who's never heard of us, you'd be like, who the hell are these guys? You know, why are they making another podcast? And what's the point of all this shit? What's the point of life? Well, I can answer one of those questions, and it's the real quick rundown of kind of like what we do. So basically, each week, one of us, either me or Xander, we recommend a film, and then each week we discuss and talk about the film, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and ultimately just have a discussion and most likely argument about that specific recommendation or recommendations if we have stuff like double features or trilogies to recommend and stuff like that.
I'm going to recommend Army of the Dead again. Just to spite you.
Okay. But on top of that, we also talk about other stuff. We talk about other fun term here, topical topics, like new releases.
Butchered that one. We butchered that one.
I practiced this in the mirror like 6 times. It's like I fucked it up this first time here. Okay. But anyway, we talk about sort of topical topics. Got it. Like new releases, TV shows, movie news, maybe even stuff like video games, so if we feel like it. Basically just sort of anything that's sort of being released,
everything except the Transformers
basically
franchise.
Like any new thing that's being released that we're passionate about and we want to talk about. So this could be like the next Avengers 69. It could be a small indie documentary, something like that. Whatever we're passionate about, when we want to talk about, we'll put it on here. Now you may be thinking, well, hey, this sounds like any other film podcast, and you're right. But to be fair, all the Marvel movies are the exact same too, yet you guys still enjoy them. So sue us. But anyway, that's enough about us. That's like a quick rundown of what we do. So let's just jump right in. Let's get started. Let's just jump right into it. Xander, so before we talk about the recommended film or films, as I say, we
get
have a
on
trilogy.
with it. Fucking finish. Let me speak.
God
Come
damn
on,
it.
Timmy.
Just tell us
Come
what the
on.
fuck is
Let's get
first
into
on
this.
the agenda. God damn it.
All right, so on the chopping block today, I'm starting us off with our recommendations. This week, I recommended the Back to the Future trilogy. But before we get into that, we're going to start off this week by discussing Loki. You have to have seen the show by now. It's literally the biggest thing on earth. Like you see in all those Disney Plus ads on YouTube or wherever. We saw, at least I saw, the first couple episodes of Loki. Timmy decidedly didn't.
I saw the first episode. I didn't have time to see the second episode. I apologize. I've been busy with like work and stuff like that.
Because he's got a Department of Defense.
Hey, now don't get me fired.
Exactly. It's gotta be so secret. But yeah, no. I really liked it. It's got Tom Hiddleston, who I've been a fan of since the original Thor. Owen Wilson as a time cop. I haven't liked Owen Wilson and everything I've seen him in, but
sorry, I just thought I had to throw that in there because Owen Wilson, yeah.
Yes. And you got a young up and coming director, Emma Herron, who I'm excited to see more from. So yeah, I liked it a lot. Before we kind of get into my specifics, Timmy, why did you only watch one episode?
I was busy, so I didn't have time to see the second episode, but I think like if I wasn't obligated to see the show, I don't think I would have continued to the second episode, to be honest, because I actually didn't like the first episode that much. I will say there was definitely some things that I definitely liked. I was interested in, without a doubt. Like Owen Wilson was definitely the standout like person in this in this first episode, and I think that might be because I really like Owen Wilson. I like a lot of his films, particularly the Wes Anderson ones. But I really liked his character. He's like this sort of like he's sort of this like Men in Black type like government agent. He's like a time cop, like you said, and he's like kind of like convincing Loki to work for this like time organization and stuff like that. Like I really liked his character. I think he was without a doubt the most interesting character in the show. What was his name? Like Mobius or something like that.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Mobius. I think it's a reference to the Mobius strip that apparently
Again,
makes
like
lets you go
I've
back
never
in
heard
time
of
of
this
Endgame.
character. I don't know much about the comics, so it's like, but yeah, but other than that, it was just I don't know. It felt like just more standard Marvel stuff. And I guess like if you're a fan of the series, like that's like thrilling news to you, but like I don't consider myself a
See, like
yeah.
this is the thing. Like the show felt really directorially interesting to me, right? Like I felt like there were a lot of cool shots, right? Like the opening, like one of the early shots where like it's like
Eh,
upside down, right? And you see him in the desert, or like the scene in the church where Mobius is first investigating like
I don't know.
the
I kind
slain
of thought I
time
already saw
agent,
stuff
right?
like that in
Like
Doctor Strange or whatever. So
I mean, like it's like you have interesting cinematography in other movies, right? But like that's not the only thing, right? It's like there are a couple scenes where the music is like really sets the tone, right? Like I thought that like the writing was really solid, right? Like in the
I
first episode by
disagree.
itself and kind of continues in the second
I
episode.
felt like the
Yeah.
writing was just it was literally either exposition or just like standard Marvel humor. Like, ooh, say goofy, quippy thing, and then person reacts to it. It's like I don't know. I don't consider myself like a Marvel hater, like because I do give credit when I do give
Totally are,
credit. No,
Timmy.
well,
You're
like I
such a
do give
Marvel
credit when
hater.
credit's due. Like I might not be the biggest fan of this like saga, but like I'll always give credit when it's due. Like I really like Infinity
Mhm.
War. I really like the first two Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I like when these movies get like either get super wacky or cut the bullshit. But I felt like it was trying to do both of those things, but it didn't succeed at either of them because like nothing about this first episode really stood out to me. It's like, oh, this like time world, this world building that they're trying to create. It's like, I mean, it's just like Black Panther, I guess, this whole like, there's these time cops, investigating, the paranormals of time. It's like when I heard that like Marvel was making this like phase four, like, oh, it's going to be unique. It's out there. We've got like a kung fu superhero movie. We've got, more Guardians. We've getting a horror movie featuring Doctor Strange and like what's her face? Scarlet Witch. It's like, oh yeah, this sounds exciting. I'm interested in that. And I thought like with these TV shows, at least like with this one, because like for everyone to know, like I haven't seen WandaVision, I haven't seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so I don't not really sure whether those two.
It's like this is
It
the
just
thing.
didn't
Like
feel like it
I'd
was
be really
pushing the boundaries. It just felt like more Marvel stuff to me. I don't know. So
yeah, I mean, I think like this is the difference between and what makes maybe Marvel so innovative, but also forces it to be so samey, right? Like the interconnected universe, right? They're never it's unprecedented in the history of film, right? To have an interconnected universe spanning 20 plus films and 3 plus shows, and soon to be more shows and more films that they're pumping out each year, right? Like it is a property, right? It's no longer a franchise. It's an intellectual property, right? Where you have all these characters in the same world with the same tone, right? With the same kind of brand. The reason why people love Marvel movies is like you can go in and see a Doctor Strange movie and it will feel pretty similar to the Black Panther movie or the Avengers movie, right? It's a consistent and reliable and pretty risk-free
I don't know.
watch, right? And I think that makes film really accessible. But I think you're right to point out that I don't know, maybe I liked the first half of WandaVision, right? You haven't seen it. It's like it goes decade by decade, different kinds of sitcoms. The first two episodes are in black and
Yeah,
white,
that sounds
right?
interesting to
It
me.
really
I wish
weaves.
more Marvel
Yeah,
movie
it's
would do that.
interesting. Like,
Yeah.
so go
Yeah.
watch it, I guess is what I would say. But I think Loki, it's not that different, right? But maybe I like the Marvel formula. I got into film by watching these Marvel movies with my dad, right? So maybe the fact that like at the end of the day it is a comedy, right? It has the same kind of like funny action scenes, like oh there's the little teleporty kind of time space device that forces Loki to be constrained, and then he puts on the enforcer, right? And she kind of he uses it to like comedically like teleport her around. Like it's the same kind of thing. I can understand that. I can understand that. Yeah.
I understand. Like when you have a saga, when you have a franchise that's as big and interconnected and like long lasting as the Marvel universe, like I get it. But I don't think that's an excuse to make everything samey. Like I understand that this is all supposed to be part of like one continuous universe, but I don't think you should just like be lazy and throw creativity out of the window. Like you should always I feel like for someone like me who like on paper should like what's happening, but it's like how can I be like remotely invested when everything's just the same? It's just more and more of the same shit over and
See,
over
I
again.
think this is the issue when you're watching Marvel movies, right? Like you can't divorce the specific like episode or film right from the overall universe, right? Like we've been so conditioned because all of these movies fit the same formula, same pattern, right? Like you can't enjoy like Loki for its own sake,
Yeah, I can't. I
right?
would like to,
And if you
but I have to think about all this
yeah,
other like Marvel, like Thor 1, 2, and 3, and all this
how
other
how
shit.
how
Yeah,
was Loki in Thor, the whole Thor
yeah.
franchise, and as the villain in the first
Like I
Avengers,
wish I could look at that as
like
its
first
own thing, but
Avengers
I
movie, right?
can't because I have to think about sort of the other Marvel movies and like I don't want this to be like a debate about like Marvel because I mean one that in of itself is a different topic that we're definitely going
I mean,
to
we've had like
yeah
so many renditions of this on our own
we're going
time.
to be talking about this at some point in the future but like
We will
yeah
sidestep
so
that
like
point.
for now
Yeah.
let's just returning to the show. I don't know like uh, beyond the fact that I just cannot look at this as its own thing without thinking about like all the Marvel things. Like if I try to look at this like show individually, like in all honesty, nothing interesting was happening. Like literally the most interesting thing that happened in the show was the DB Cooper scene when like Loki was secretly DB Cooper and he like he pulled off
That
like
was
the
funny.
DB
Yeah.
Cooper heist. It's like that was literally the only interesting thing that happened in the show and I wish this episode was more
See,
like
like,
that.
and that's
So
that's that's an interest, that whole sequence, right? Even that particular like moment in our scene within that
uh-huh.
sequence where Loki is being shown like elements of his past to kind of be interrogated and Mr. Psychology by Owen Wilson's Mobius, right? Or when he sees his future later on in the episode, and he is forced to confront kind of the endpoint of this, like I must be powerful as a means of like compensating for my own lack of self-esteem, that whole complex, the endpoint of where that leads him, and he dies and he causes so much strife and suffering, and his mother is killed, and he loses his relationship with everyone he loves, including Thor, right? Like I feel like that's an interesting character moment, like a whole character arc, right? And the fact that like I think Tom Hiddleston can really pull that off. Like he just has so much subtlety, right? Even as his lines are so histrionic, and how he projects. See, this is the thing, right? Like I feel like if Loki were its own thing, right? I mean, maybe you couldn't have Loki because you wouldn't have all the flashback scenes, and
I
how
mean,
those
none of
are
these shows
awesome.
would
But
exist without the
um,
Marvel universe in its entirety. And like, it's like, and I can't imagine someone who's like never seen a Marvel movie just like jump right into the show. They'll have no idea what the hell's happening. Like the first 10 minutes is literally just Endgame, but like from a different perspective. It's like I can't imagine someone who's never seen any of these Marvel movies jumping in this
like the
episode going like, what the
the
hell?
biggest revelation we find out about Endgame
What?
in the show, right, is that apparently Loki has baller sense of smell, and he could smell two Tony Starks.
You talk?
I thought that
Oh,
was a pretty
yeah, that
stupid
was
moment.
dumb.
It was like the writers have to answer the question: how does he know that the Avengers went back in time? Like, how does he know? Oh, I could smell two Tony Starks. Like that was the one moment in this scene where I just kind of like scoffed. It was like, this is so
Yeah,
stupid.
I don't know.
Like
I
yeah, I just
I don't know. The way that I imagined the show, it was like supposed to be like Men in Black, but like with Marvel characters. And like on paper, that sounds awesome. I would
see,
watch that
and
show. Yeah.
this is my pitch to you for the second episode, because that's what the second episode is, right? It's Men in Black, right? With I won't spoil it, but it's literally like Loki as a variant, joins forces with the time, like with a time variance authority.
Is that what they're called? I literally had trouble figuring out what their name was. The TVA.
It's
Yeah.
TVA. It's a stupid name. It's from the comics, so they kind of have to. But like the second episode, it's like it's funny, right? There's a lot of intrigue, right? You get to learn who the villain is, right? And has personal connections with Loki, right? Like I would say give it a try. Right, like it's hard. I understand and I can
Yeah.
empathize with how, because it's Marvel, right, it's hard to look past like the interconnectedness and how the first 10 minutes has to be Avengers Endgame to explain why the fuck there is this series, and then we're gonna show flashbacks of all these different parts of older movies because Loki's been there, and we kind of have to like get the audience up to speed, right, for movies that came out in 2012, right? Like I can understand how that's limiting, right? But I would say give it a chance, right? Like try to release yourself from the
Release
Marvel criticism.
myself. What are you, a fucking guru?
I'm a guru, man. I'm selling Disney. I'm gonna get it all
Yeah,
the
you're
profit.
just paying me. Did Disney pay you to like say all this shit to me?
Did they
'Cause,
pay
like,
us to say all this shit? This is literally just free advertising,
why
right?
would Disney pay me? I'm talking shit about their product.
Disney doesn't need to pay you. You've already got an internship at the Department of Defense.
Okay, well, all right. If the Department of Defense, never mind. I don't want to say anything that gets me fired. Never mind. I'm just gonna end right there. Look, okay, fine. Like for your sake, I'll check it out. I'll check out the second episode, but I don't know. Like if I wasn't impressed with the first episode, like, and I mean, my philosophy with television, and I guess it's not fair because like I only saw one episode, but like the first 3 to 5 episodes, if a show doesn't hook me, if it doesn't interest me in any way, I'm done. Like I'm like, it's like I just give up on it. It's like, because if I didn't like the first like 6 hours of a show, like why the fuck should I continue investing in something?
Yeah, I'm the
You know what I
same
mean?
way. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
so
reason why I watch movies more so than shows. I mean,
so do I.
yeah,
Yeah.
shows ask a large long-term commitment from me,
That's why
right?
we're
Like,
a movie podcast, not a TV
yeah,
show podcast.
I
Yeah.
can watch 2 hours and it's done, but I have to watch like I started watching Star Trek: The Next Generation during quarantine,
Nerd.
and I got 4 seasons in because there are 25-ish episodes each season and they're all 45 minutes long. So like,
Yeah, quarantine gave me an excuse to finally see Breaking Bad, and like 5 seasons later, it's like the greatest fucking show on earth.
right,
Yeah.
like quit while you're ahead. But
Yeah.
like even still, like you had one episode in, right? I think it's great. I like the cinematography. I love the performances. I thought the story was interesting. I love the character moments and how it develops Loki, and you get to see kind of his interior world really for the first time, I think, relative to his other arcs and prior Thor movies. Like I would say check it out. Maybe we'll have a part 2 of this conversation next week.
Maybe. Okay. All right. Yeah, okay.
Mission accomplished.
I guess you've sold it on me. I'll check it out. I'll see if things get better or worse. And yeah, maybe if I do finish it, we'll have a part 2 of this discussion. But yeah, I don't know.
Speaking of second parts,
okay,
and third parts,
is that really how you're going to transition this thing?
Well, speaking of second and third parts and originals and the whole Back to the Future trilogy,
just get into it, asshole.
Let's get into it. Yeah, I recommended this week Back to the Future parts 1 through 3.
Trilogy,
directed, yep, the whole trilogy, right? It's directed by Robert Zemeckis. Executive produced or just produced by Steven Spielberg, right? Pretty early on in his career.
Zemeckis and the producer of the films, Bob Gale, they also wrote the scripts together. So
nice. Yeah, it's got a great like production leadership, and the cast was also pretty damn good. Stars Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly. But yeah, let me. I think what we're gonna do in this conversation is we'll talk about why we both love. I think I can be transparent about that. The first movie. And so Timmy, what happened in part 1?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, part 1, Back to the Future 1, in my opinion, the most perfect like as perfect as a blockbuster you can get. It's one of the best films of the 80s. It's one of my personal favorite movies of all time. For any of you who follow me on Letterboxd, I just have it as my 4th favorite film of all time. And yeah, it's a very simple thing. I mean, let's be honest, everyone has seen fucking Back to the Future, but like for any of you who haven't, we're getting into spoilers, but just a quick plot synopsis. Back to the Future, it's set in 1985. follows a young high school loser kid named Marty McFly,
Is he
played by
really a
Michael J.
loser
Fox.
kid? I thought he was the coolest kid on the block.
Well,
Was the whole point?
like
Yeah.
the principal Strickland is like, what's what you're gonna try out for the band? What's the point, kid? You're too much like your old man.
You're a
No one
slacker.
McFly has ever. Yeah, you're a slacker. I want to be a slacker for the rest of your life. Yeah, it follows a teenager. He accidentally is sent back to 1955 in a time traveling DeLorean built by his weird ass scientist friend, Doc Brown, played by Christopher Lloyd, because I guess Marty doesn't have any other friends. And he's trapped in the past and he's got to team up with young Doc while also trying to get his parents to meet and prevent his existence from disappearing, and also trying to get back to the present and stuff like that. He's got to get back to the future. Hey, that's the name of the show, Ron Howard.
Roll credits.
Yep. My feelings on this film is like pretty apparent. Like I said, it's one of my favorite films. It's like as perfect as a blockbuster as you can get. The direction is amazing. The writing is both smart and it's both clever and consistent. It's consistently funny. There's things always happening. Every character is just so interesting and well acted. The performances are great. The special effects, in my opinion, still hold up to this day after like what 30 years. Some of the action scenes were amazing. I think a lot of the comedy hits really well. It's like not all of the things make me laugh, but the fact that like a film that I've seen since my childhood like still makes me laugh. Like some of the
Timmy, why did I recommend this movie?
I don't know. You want to answer that or?
You're just going off.
Yeah, I mean, you recommended it, but it's like I have to I can't. It's one of my favorite films of all time. It's just
this movie is core to his identity.
It's as perfect as you can get with a film. I mean, it's not like my favorite movie of all time. Like I still have a couple others that I think are better than this, but like in my opinion, you just can't get more perfect with a blockbuster like this.
So Timmy's gush is done. I hope. But yeah, I just wanted to watch this movie because a little bit of that, like outside of this podcast, Timmy and I tend to talk a lot. We talk a lot about movies, and every time I talk about movies, I feel like
definitely we just only talk on this podcast. So.
Oh yeah, no, we just like I want to watch this movie because it's one of those like essential trilogies, right? Like you've got a few of them, right? Like you've got like the Godfather, right?
Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings, yeah,
exactly. And just it's one of those movies that I'd seen as a kid, and I was like, why is Timmy like all into this, right? And so I was like, I wanted to watch it, right? Needless to say, I was blown the fuck away by part one. I don't remember. I just remember it being just kind of this like, oh, this is this 80s nostalgia movie, right? About how everything is awesome and we're going to go back to the 50s because like, oh, 50s nostalgia during the 80s. And I don't remember it being that good, but like the opening shot, right? Like the opening scene, the opening sequence is just a bunch of clocks, right? And it sets a tone thematically, right? It's about time, right? And the characterization, right? Like fucking Doc, like the Doc is introduced like in two scenes. He's on the phone, right? Like,
but I feel like even before then, with all like the clocks and like the mechanics and stuff, like Doc doesn't even need to be there for us to understand what his character is. Like that's
exactly
just how great
he's obsessed with time travel, right? Trying to figure it out. Like he's a scientist. He's got clocks everywhere because
kind of cuckoo in the head.
He's got this like weird Rube Goldberg machine, like because he doesn't take the time to feed his fucking dog. His dog is named Einstein, right? And then fucking Marty McFly walks in, and you get a sense of Marty's relationship by how he's looking all around and
the montage where he's dialing up like the amplifiers and all that stuff. It's like he doesn't need to say a single thing. I already understand what this character is, like what his shtick, what are his goals and motivation. It's like the first 5 minutes, no dialogue, and yet we completely understand what these characters are, what their relationship is, and on top of that, you get some really funny moments, like the whole like, Doc, are you telling me that it's 8:45 precisely? Like,
I'm 25 minutes late from school. Why did I sound like Mickey Mouse?
I'm late. It's like, damn, I'm late for school. It's like that always makes me laugh. It's like it's so dumb, but it's like so funny. It's like, and it's not like stupid like man-child like Will Ferrell humor. It's like it's funny. It's clever. Yeah,
like it's one of those rare, really good movies that I feel like square the circle between being a very good film and being a very accessible film, right? Like I feel like at a certain point, like there's a trade-off between like, oh, I really fucking love Birdman, right? I really fucking love Whiplash, right? Or I
Hmm.
really fucking love Spirited Away. Like these are some of my favorite movies, right? But like when I've sat down and tried to watch them with other people, right? It's not an experience that people can really empathize with. Right. Like I don't know why. Maybe it's just as we've watched more movies, we become snobs, right? Like we had this
They're very
discussion.
specific
Yeah,
kind of films,
yeah, right.
very
But like,
indie
but
art house
when you
films.
watch
Yeah.
this movie, right, like it simultaneously has all that complexity, but like it's a high school nostalgia movie, right? Everyone can empathize with Marty McFly because he's got the cool kid elements and he's kind of skateboarding everywhere. We can talk about those scenes about how it's so fluid, moving between different scenes. Like we can talk about that, but he's also like he's got confidence issues, right? And he's into music, right? And he's bullied by yeah, and he's bullied by Biff, by Principal Strickland, right? Like you can really see like I was like I am nothing like this kid, right? My high school experience is very different. But, like I can still empathize.
Yeah, we see a lot of it in his character. Yeah, so it's like I think the best films are like they're complex enough to warrant like artistic and intelligent discussions, but they're still accessible enough where it's like everyone can talk about this. Like there's a reason why this film is still being talked about. There's a
Mm-hmm,
reason why parents introduce this to their kids and their kids are
mm-hmm.
introducing it to their kids. It's like it's why a fucking holiday was dedicated to Back to the Future. Like Back to the Future Day, like when Marty and Doc like went to the future and Back to the Future Part 2. It's like there's a reason why all this shit is happening is because this film is just that amazing. It's just that resonant with people. And I don't even think like one genre like sticks to this film. It's like at one point it's like a kooky sci-fi film, and at another point it's a coming of age film. It's a period piece. It's a comedy. It's like it's all these things blended together into this like one kooky adventurous movie, and I think it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think like all around, like I could give my rating now.
I want to focus. I want to talk about the comedy a little bit because I feel like when people talk about Back to the Future, it's like the one thing people kind of like look past. I
It's
think the
really
film's really
performance
funny.
driven.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely performed. Like Crispin Glover in this film is fucking hilarious. Like, I don't know if it's because like he did that on purpose or it's just that he's just unintentionally like just naturally weird. But like everything that comes out of this like kid's mouth, it's like so fucking funny. It's like, Marty, you gotta
I
come help
I
me.
I am your
Last night
density.
last night Darth Vader told me that if I don't ask out the raid, he'll melt my brain. It's like, oh my god, it's
I'll
like,
do your homework, Biff. I'll do your homework. Like yeah, like I
what are you
just
looking at,
see
you Irish
see this
plug?
this is
Yeah.
this is why maybe actually we could contrast this in Marvel for a second, right? Because like Marvel's humor is really dialogue driven, right? There's like there are moments and then there are like quips in those moments,
Yeah,
right?
it's just
One
not
liners
funny.
that
Yeah.
that make it. I find fun. I mean, I my anyone who's ever dated me is like you say too many dad jokes, Sanders. This is why you do the intros and also tell the jokes, and I don't. But
Yeah.
like the humor in this movie, right? Like it's like Marty McFly. He's stumbling around, right? Or he's reacting, or he's doing something that's situationally
Yeah, the
interesting, like being
scene where
blown back by the
Marty
amplifier.
gets like hit by the
Yeah,
car instead of George, and like no, Leah Thompson's like father is like, who are you? Wait, who are you? Stella, another one of these damn kids jumped right in front of my car. I'm like, wait, again, like another, like more kids have jumped in front of your car. Like it's like
I don't know.
small moments like that I
Yeah,
just found so
yeah,
funny.
and
Yeah.
also it's like I feel like the performances are so physical, right? Like
Oh yeah,
Marty, oh yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
like Michael J. Fox is just like skateboarding around, right? He's running away, right? He's like in the later movies, like he's hiding in the back of the car, right? Like Christopher Lloyd, he's got bug eyes, right? And he's constantly
Yeah, I
moving
think
all
he's definitely
around.
the
He's
best part of the
so
film. Like
he,
I think, I mean, everyone does a great job, but like he gives the best performance in my
oh
opinion.
fuck yeah, like but yeah, we'll talk
Yeah.
about like Doc and his character's performance, but just like I feel like it's very smart, right? Like it's performance driven, it's situational, right? There are funny like dialogue quips, right?
It kind
that
of
that happen in
reminded
the
me of
movie.
like
Yeah.
how Edgar Wright writes a film. Huh, right. Yeah, it's like all these like it's like these quirky like sort of performance humor that I see in a lot of like Edgar Wright's films, like the callbacks to things like in the beginning you see a man hanging from the clock tower, and then like at the end of the film that's literally how Doc gets Marty like back to
Mhm,
the future and stuff like that.
mhm.
It's like it's very Edgar Wright type, and I think that maybe that's what I appreciated more about this, like viewing it like
But I feel like Edgar Wright's humor is really editing and visually driven, right? Like I always remember the world's end scene where like there are multiple like, oh, you have the beers and then you have the cup of water, right? Like, and it's a really slick, like really interesting thing to look
Yeah, I
at,
thought the
right?
film had
Yeah,
moments like that I really
yeah,
appreciated.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So maybe it's less it's less like, I feel like that everything is dialogue, right? Everything's got to be something like funky, funny, or funky observation by a
and the comedy
character,
doesn't
right?
take away from the dramatic scenes either.
No,
Like
it doesn't. Yeah,
one of
comedy, like
my
I was thinking about the other day, like comedy like is so often used to like let some air out, right? Of like metaphorically
it's
of the
a
scene.
tension
Yeah,
releaser. It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
it gives the audience to breathe a little bit. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
but it, like, and I think that's what makes the dramatic scenes like even more powerful. Like one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie was when Marty plays the guitar, he plays Earth Angel, and that scene where like George and God, what was Leah Thompson's character's name? I can't remember.
Lorraine.
For Lorraine, that was they were dancing, and then this redheaded stepchild comes in. He's like, "Scram, McFly, I'm cutting in," and stuff like that.
I thought
And
that
like,
was like, actually I
and
thought that
then
was kind of
when you
awkward, but
see
yeah.
like, but when you see like Marty, he's like, you see his hand like slowly fading out of existence, and he's like desperately begging George to like finally stand up for himself because he stood up to himself against Biff, which I thought was also a great scene. And when he finally like pushes that redheaded stepchild across the floor, and he like finally kisses Lorraine, which gets like Marty to like is like he's back to life, you know, he's back to it, and he plays the guitar. It's like things like that I really appreciated. It's like it's not goofy, like the comedy doesn't take away from the dramatic moments of that scene. It's like it's awesome. I love it so much,
Yeah, I mean,
you know.
I feel like that's because the humor is wrapped up in the characters, right? Like the fact that like Christopher Lloyd's Doc, right, is all over the place, and the mad scientist, right? Maybe he defined that trope. I don't know. Like, or the fact that Marty is like gonna make these observations, or be kind of cool, and like, oh, this these are my parents. What the fuck? Like I'm so weird. Right?
Yeah, I thought it
Like,
was a bit of a subversion.
yeah,
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 like he's
it was
not just a
cool.
kooky scientist. He
Yeah,
says
like
cool like when he's like when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit. It's like, oh, he's like a cool scientist and stuff like that.
yes,
So
yes. Let's talk
yeah.
about Doc. Like, I don't know. I really like this character, right?
Mhm.
Like, I like just his introduction, right? Like going back to the beginning, it's just like his voice, right? Like he's fast talking, right? He's on the phone. He's like, Marty, can you do this, do that? Like, oh, and be careful, like with the amplifier. Like it might be a little like after
Yeah,
that whole scene. Like he's just unaware, right? Situationally, but he's brilliant,
it's
right?
very
And
Edgar Wrighty. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
maybe he is Edgar. I don't know.
mm.
Like I just his introduction, and then you see him in person, right? And he's got the hair, Einstein-y hair, right? And he's got the bug eyes, right? And he's just fast talking, and talking about like, oh, I got this time travel device, and Marty is like with the camera and just reacting, like, what the fuck? Like this is real? What are you talking about, Doc? Like I just that whole introductory sequence, I just thought was wonderful.
Yeah, it was
Um,
awesome.
yeah,
And like,
yeah.
and I think my favorite part in that film with Doc, it's like, I mean, I think that climax scene where um Mart Doc is desperately trying to like connect the cables and stuff like on the clock tower, where like Marty is like driving the car to like where the cables are, and then they play the dun dun bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 bum, and it's like Doc is like connecting the cables while it's like just at the right moment where Marty just zooms
See,
past, and
that's
like,
actually, I think, my least
and
favorite scene in
where
the film.
really I thought that was intense. It's like I
I
still always like at
It
the edge
felt
of my
so
seats when I see that.
manufactured,
Not at
right? It's
all.
like, oh, here's another issue with the wire, and then I'm going to like Doc is going to react, and it's like, oh fuck, like it's caught on the tree now, right? Like, and I have to, and like, and how he gets electrocuted, and he just
I
fucking
mean, it's
walks away,
goofy,
right?
but
Like,
like it's a goofy movie.
I don't just like, and
And like that
he's gonna
scene
hang
where
off the
like
top of the clock
and that scene
tower.
where
Just
like
I don't
the
know.
DeLorean goes to the future, and he looks at like what's happened, and he just like kind of runs out, and then he's like screams and like with victory. He's like, yeah, it's like
I mean, I
that
thought
scene
that was
always
good. Like
puts a smile on my face. It's like it's awesome,
I
man.
think the climactic scene is
Great
really good.
character moment. Yeah.
I feel like there were some unnecessary like like need to, like, if the writers are like, we have to make this be like the edge of your seat, right? Like in reality, I think it just would have been much better off if like Doc hadn't fallen off the clock tower, and then like the fucking wire didn't get caught on the tree and like
Well,
fucking
what
break,
would
and you
you
have to
have
connect it.
preferred though?
Like
Like,
I would have just have preferred like it's a race against the clock, and like he barely makes it just like that. right? And Doc manages to
But
connect
how
it
would that
on
create
the top.
tension though? Because like had the tree not fallen, everything would just gone
find
according to
find other
plan.
ways for there to be delays, right?
But like what though?
I don't know, like Biff kind of comes in,
Well, Biff's out
or
for the count. He's out cold. He
I
got
mean, yeah,
punched in the face.
Einstein runs away.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like Einstein isn't in the car at that point. Like I feel like I felt I remember thinking while I was watching the scenes, like why are they making me think like this clumsiness of Doc doesn't have anything to do with anything else in the film. It's just literally
I
like
don't know. I thought
Doc
it
being a
was
klutz. Right, that's why like this like Marty almost doesn't go back in time.
I don't think it was
Doesn't go back in
him
time.
being a klutz. It was just him desperately like he was trying to like fix a problem that was happening. Like it didn't feel abrupt. It didn't feel like Hollywoody. It didn't feel constructed. Like it felt genuine. Like I was out the edge of my seats when I like I'm always on the edge of my seats every time I see that scene. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
awesome, but
I don't
whatever.
know. Like
Yeah.
I love the scene where like he like where there's like the fire marks, fire tracks, right? Like I'm what am I saying?
Yeah, fire tracks. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
like
right.
fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are tracks of fire after he goes back in time and he's celebrating, right? Like I think that's really cool. So I
Yeah.
think that's really cool. I think the most interesting thing about this film though. Is how it manages to string together different versions of the same character and yet feel coherent, right? Like you've got
Yeah.
1980s and then like
I don't know what
1950s
it
and the
is, but I
1980s
feel like
almost dies and
80s
then it stopped, right? Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I feel like 80s Doc is like such a different person from 50s Doc. Like because I
Mm-hmm.
mean Christopher Lloyd doesn't really change his performance in a major way, but and I don't really know how to wrap my head around it, but I feel like the Doc that he's playing in the 50s is a different. I mean, yeah, it's because he's like younger than like 80s Doc, obviously, but I don't know. It's like it doesn't change his performance in any way, but it nonetheless feels different, you know, and I don't really know how to like communicate that through words, if that
Yeah,
makes
yeah, and
sense. Yeah.
that's what I was trying to talk about, right? Like it feels coherent, but like I can't pinpoint what's different. Right?
Yeah.
Like they feel different, yet they feel continuous, right? And I don't know what the difference is or what they're doing to make it feel continuous. And
Yeah.
I
And it
thought that
wasn't
was
like
weird, yeah,
obvious
or
like
interesting.
between like 80s and 50s like George and um Lorraine. It's like the first 80s like George is like a nerd. He's like and it's like it's an obviously like very over the top caricature compared to like his I mean he's still kind of like that. He's still like a nerdy guy, but I felt like Lorraine's like switch from like 80s to 50s was much more jarring. Like not that that took the film like not that that took away anything for the film or anything. It's just like I don't know, like Lorraine's change was definitely the most jarring. But again, like I feel like nonetheless it's kind of an effective like switcheroo. It's like Marty's like I think my mom grew up as like a nun. She's like very strict about like me seeing my girlfriend and stuff like that. It's
See,
like
I think
it's like
Lorraine is like
yeah.
the weakest part of this film, like being honest. Or like I
I
thought the performances like the older version of Lorraine was like, oh, when she's wearing all that old makeup and she just
yeah.
her voice is really weird. Like and she sounds like she's trying to be older than she is. I thought just the performance was a little off-putting. And then like when you get to like the younger like they go back 1950s and like she becomes enamored with this dude because like she's like helping him recover from being hit by a car and there's all the situational irony because incest is bad, right? Like
That's
I
actually one of the reasons why like producers are actually hesitant about financing the film because like
yeah,
they were like, why is there an incest subplot in this film?
yeah,
And
it
like
was like
Zemeckis
this
is
is
like,
so
fuck
weird,
you,
right?
I want this in my
This is so
movie.
weird. Like
Yeah.
it's funny, but it's like okay, this is strange. Like how did this get in here? But like I felt like even getting past that, like I thought the representation of like teenage femininity and sexuality where she's just essentially just like sex hungry, right? And she's just like trying, she's got like she's pouting her lips and she's like, oh, Calvin Klein, he's so awesome. It felt really one note, really one
I think
dimensional. Like I don't
individually
know.
I agree with you,
Yeah.
but like I think within the context of the film it makes sense because like we have like this jarring like difference between like in the beginning where Marty's like I think my mom like grew up a nun or whatever because like she won't let me go after girls she hates it when girls go after boys, but it's a complete juxtaposition where it's like Lorraine is like madly in love with Marty. She's constantly going after her and stuff like that.
For me, like I don't really see how you go from like this really, I think maybe I don't know if this is problematic, but like sexually aggressive, right? Like like 17, 18-year-old,
Well,
right?
think about like the story
To
she
like this
told at the
ascetic
beginning, though.
like nun, right?
Well,
I don't know, like
but think
that was
about the story that she told though. Like in the beginning, she was like, "Oh yeah, like George got hit by the car, and like
mm-hmm.
it was like a Florence Nightingale type of thing, and like we eventually went to the dance together, and that's where we first kissed." And then like with like a sense of regret, like a deep regret, she was like, "I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life with him." Like she hated the fact that they were together. So when Marty like saves George and he like his ass like doesn't get hit by the car, like it starts out the same way as it did with George, except now it's with Marty. But the thing is, though, what Marty rejects her, and the
Yeah.
fact that he keeps rejecting her, she keeps wanting him more. And the fact that he's doing this cool shit, like he's beating up Biff in his game with a fucking skateboard and like doing the like bad boy Marty shit. It's like that entices her. It's like where she, at the end of that skateboard scene, which by the way was awesome. Like I just want to put that out there. She was like, they were like, "Where does this guy live?" And she's like, "I don't know, but I want to find out." And she's like basically asking him out to the dance. It's like she's basically becoming the thing that Lorraine in the beginning says like she hates. She hates when girls like pine after boys, but she herself is becoming that. So by the end of the film, when she finally gets together with George, like she understands like, oh, love isn't just something that just happens because shit happens. It's like
I mean, but
things it's
like
where we fall in
I
love and like
understand
men
like
were stand
maybe
up for
I
you
didn't
stuff. Yeah.
maybe I didn't pick up on some of the like, oh, the denial and how like maybe where Marty was cool and charming and appealing and kind of shoved her away because incest and all. Yeah, and she's my mother, which is the same thing, but yeah.
It's like I'm kissing
And
my
yeah,
brother.
and yeah, that was funny, right? It was weird. It was funny. And then George is kind of awkward and actually super pervy. His like introductory scene is like it being people,
Basically
which
basic
was
nerd. Yeah.
yeah, right. It was like what the fuck. Like I under maybe I could see how those dynamics kind of shape her
I mean, I
character,
will
but like
admit,
but
yeah,
my point
yeah.
remains like the fact that like, oh, this character's evolution is, oh, she is denied romance, so she's going to get more and more obsessed, right? It's like it's just really one dimensional and really silly, right? And I don't feel like it speaks to anything else like thematic about the film. It's just like the mom is like this severe austere person, and like somehow she has a teenage crush and it goes wild, right? I feel like what does that say about like women
I will
and
admit,
represent?
yeah,
I
I
just think
think
it's like the weakest part of the film. I
had the
don't know,
film
like
done, I feel like a
yeah,
film should have done a better job because
yeah.
like I think had they like given Lorraine more to do other than just being horny and like
Just kind of
wanting to
fawning after
fuck,
like,
yeah,
and then the whole
Marty and
scene
stuff
with
like
like
that.
Biff where Biff is like
George
high-key
punches him in
raping
the
her,
face,
right?
and
And
then
like
she immediately falls for
yeah,
George. I'm like,
and then this isn't like this, she's not traumatized, right? She's like this guy is like
yeah, she
shoving
should be
her hand
traumatized.
up
Like
her,
he
and she
basically
she's
raped
like,
her.
but
He basically
now she
raped
just
her.
yeah,
Yeah.
she just goes on about her day, and like she gets saved, and now she's in love with George, and Marty can exist, and now there's a dance, and it's
Yeah,
cool,
I
right?
will
I just
admit that I think that's the one thing that the film kind of is lacking. It's like I really wish there was like more to do with her character. It's like other than just being horny and like, and I just wish like there was more realistic, like sort of emphasis on the whole. I was basically raped by my school bully, but I guess that doesn't matter because we're now hiring him to be our fucking like cleaner guy or
yeah,
whatever.
exactly,
So
like the
yeah,
histories, right? Like I don't know, I thought it was I thought that was really silly, and I think this is kind of ties into what you're saying earlier, right? Like how this parallel with Marty and George kind of affected the character of Lorraine. Like I feel like the parallels in this movie are like really on the fucking nose, right? Like the contrast between like the Biff who is like super like think McFly think at the beginning, right? And then
and
he's
then he
like
gets
this
punched and now he's a
subservient.
complete pussy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
it's just like,
yeah.
and also like the lines are repeated, right? Like in different contexts, right? I think there's a line that gets used by George later on, like it's escaping me, but like it just there were a couple like I'm gonna say the same line in a different context because I'm gonna demonstrate how my
My
character is
destiny,
thrown.
my
Yeah,
density.
my dent that was funny. Like this is funny.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It felt really like I don't know, like on the nose and predictable,
I
right?
don't know.
It's like George becomes more like Marty because George is coached by Marty, and then at the end of the movie is like there's a complete role
I
reversal from
I
what
don't know.
happened. It's just all really simplistic in my mind. I
I
don't know.
didn't mind
Yeah,
that. I think had the should could the film have presented that in a more subtle way? Like obviously, yeah. But like I think for what they're going for, it's like very effective. It's like, you know, Marty doesn't come from like the best family. His family is like a family of wimps and like losers and stuff like
Mm,
that. And it's like a butterfly effect. Like just changing this one thing and changing the circumstances of all these other things. It's like it creates a different, it eventually leads to the same goals, but it creates a different tone. It creates a different, circumstances for what happens. So like that bizarre change, like not bizarre, sudden change from like nerdy George McFly and like nun Lorraine to being more confident, more outgoing, and living in a more lavish lifestyle. I think like for the sake of like the narrative that they're going for, I thought it was kind of effective. Like,
see, like
yeah,
I
so
don't know, I don't know what this movie means thematically, which is another thing, but like whatever it means,
it doesn't have to have a thematic, theme.
they're so they're like there's such radical effects, right? And really the radical effects boil down to the fact that like Marty got hit by the car instead of George, right? And that was the catalyzing moment for their love, right? And then the entire like movie is trying to like work them towards loving each other through like really simplistic, like I am repressed sex hungry 17-year-old, or I am Mr. Nerd who doesn't have a spine peeping Tom, and they're all radically transformed
Can't go
because
to the
of 3
dance.
days. Yeah,
Science fiction theater's playing.
exactly. Like it feels really simplistic to me, and like the heart of the movie is like the character evolution of the parents, right? Because like Doc doesn't really change. I don't feel like really Marty changes. Maybe he becomes more confident in his music. That's the only thing I could really point out as the change, right? And so just I
I
thought that
think
like
Doc changes a little bit.
a little bit like this
Yeah.
is my point. Like the only real radical change are the side characters, right? And the changes are motivated by like really silly things or really problematic things, right? And I don't
But
know.
like,
I didn't
but it
mean that
doesn't
much to
take
me.
anything out of the film. And again, it's a comedy. It's like, I mean, it's like a lot of things, but in its core, it's a comedy. It's a very goofy, over the top film, and
But
so
it's
it's
also
like
sophisticated as fuck, right? So I feel like the
it's
writing and the
it's a.
character work could
I
have been
think I
also
look at this as
sophisticated.
more. It's like it's a
Yeah.
goofy. It's like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. It's like it's a goofy, over the top story with sophisticated and complex filmmaking and writing.
Yeah, and
So
and that for me, like I feel like it could have been more complicated. You're the first person to say with the Marvel movies it could be better, right? All this humor could be better. Like I feel like some of those lessons
no,
apply
the Marvel
here,
movies
right?
should be what the Back to the Future movies are. I want to make
I don't
that
know.
clear.
I
Yeah,
don't know. Like
it's like
I think like the technical elements of this movie are fantastic, right? But I also want to talk about Marty and Doc, right? Because I
mm,
can praise their performances and their humor,
oh
right? And
God,
just
is it going to
yeah,
be one of those Treasure Planet things again?
no, no. Oh, I love the character relationship, but I actually hate the protagonist. Like, I don't know. I feel like the protagonist is weak, right? I'm not going to mention their relationship because I didn't think the relationship between Doc and Marty
Oh,
was
you think
actually like all
Marty's a
that stuff.
weak character?
Yeah, I. What is he? How does he
Really?
change? Like, he's funny and he's cool and he's well performed, but like, how is he an interesting character?
Like, oh, you're. I mean,
Like, I feel like it's all performance.
we talked about this before. Like, he's a relatable character. We see him as
Yeah,
something
fair.
in
Yeah,
Marty. So it's like like you literally admitted this yourself. It's like even though I don't live the same things
yeah.
as Marty, like we're not punk skateboarder rock band types, but we
I
can
could see you
still
as a punk
see.
skateboarder rock band.
I
Maybe
mean,
when
I
you're
more or
40.
less was like that. It's like, but we still see ourselves in Marty. We're unconfident. We're not really sure if we have the chance to succeed. And Marty learns through basically this like over the top back like time travel journey where it's like, he tells George like, hey, it's like if you put your mind into it, you can accomplish anything. But in a way, he's kind of telling himself that
See,
because
and
like
that's
by getting his
interesting.
parents
That's
back
really
together,
interesting.
he realizes he can do anything. It's like if I can put my mind to it, I can accomplish anything. The same way if Doc and I put our minds to it, we can accomplish anything. We can literally go back to the fucking future. It's like it's nothing about this is like it's like
He
the
doesn't
themes,
change as
yeah.
a character. Like his traits remain the same
But I don't think he has
fundamentally.
to. He just has to like. I
See,
mean,
see
he doesn't.
what I think you're
Yeah,
saying, like what is interesting, and you make a fair point, like putting my own words earlier back at me. Like
yeah.
you can project onto him,
Philosophy, bitch.
right?
Yeah.
You can project like yourself onto him, but I don't know if that's because of his character, but more so the setting,
I feel like that's
right? It's
definitely
like an
because of his
80s and
character.
50s nostalgia movie.
Oh, the
Well,
80s has
like
nothing to do with that.
I
The
mean,
50s
what are
have
you
nothing to do.
talking about? Of
But
course,
no,
it's
if
like the whole
anything,
joke is it's Calvin Klein, right? Like
No,
he's
but if anything,
skateboarding, like the
I
rock
feel like the
music
different
that's from the
settings
80s. Like,
definitely
yeah.
adds to that. It's like no matter what decade you live in, our problems are still the same. A high schooler in the 50s, like George, goes through the same problems that a high school in the 80s, like Marty, goes through. They have issues with self-confidence. They're not confident in themselves. They just need that extra boost, that extra push to like think to themselves, look, I might not be the most talented or the most like cool or suave or whatever, but it's like Doc always says, and like Doc is the connective tissue that connects all this shit. It's like if you put your mind into it, you can accomplish anything, and that's something that both George
I
and
think
Marty
that was
take to
the
heart.
line.
So
That was
yeah,
the line. Like I think George like high key repeats it at the end, right? Like he did I say high key repeat? What the fuck?
yeah, George repeats it to
Yeah, he
Marty. Yeah,
repeats it to
so yeah.
Marty, and like Doc said, I thought that was really cringy. Yeah, that was a line. That was I was just like at that moment I was
I
like,
didn't think it was
why?
cringy at
I
all. I
thought it was
liked it.
cringy. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I
I
thought
just
it
thought it
was
was
cute.
corny.
Yeah.
I feel like you could have said
Again,
something
it's a
some different.
corny, cheesy movie. It's like with corny, cheesy It's like
I don't
again, it's like
know.
the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy.
I
They're
don't know.
corny, cheesy dialogue, but it
I
works.
feel like
So
Spider-Man 2 does the corny cheesy better. But like I don't I thought that was awkward. But like maybe you're persuading me here. Like I was gonna say like, oh, he's really weak because he doesn't change, and I don't know what I'm supposed to take away. But like maybe it's less about like his personality and his person, but instead
but
like
he's
the
also a
context
cool
he's in.
character. Like
Yeah.
another one of my favorite scenes in the film is like when Marty punches Biff and then he does that skateboard chase where like I mean
And then it
Biff
ends
is
with the
just
manure. Yeah,
with the
yeah.
manure. Like I mean Biff is like basically I didn't know Biff was like a psychopathic like
We haven't
manslaughtering
even
villain
talked
or
about
whatever.
Biff yet. I
Which by
mean,
the way he's great too.
yeah,
Like I he's
yeah.
well cast and
Yeah.
I think he does a great job of being this asshole bully. Like I think
I don't think
the
he needs to be anything else, right? Like he doesn't like his evolution. He's the same person in like the 1980s as he is in the
and I
1940s
think
at the end of the day.
that's the point.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly,
why but that I
exactly.
also don't understand why you have that issue with like, oh, Marty doesn't change. He's the same person, but like Biff doesn't
I
change
mean,
either.
Marty's
But
the
like he's like, yeah.
protagonist. Biff, like you have all these one-dimensional
But he's the main
villains, right?
antagonist of the film, though.
Yeah,
I would
I
argue,
mean,
yeah.
like one dimension. I feel like it's easier, or I can let slide like lack of character progression from the villain, right, than I can from the protagonist, right? And I wonder at some point if like I feel like
And I
I've
feel
made
like he was very realistically dark. Like when he basically rapes Lorraine and he's like he has this like evil stare at George. He's like, "What are you, deaf, McFly? Like close the door and turn around." It's I mean he's not like Jason or like Michael Myers from Halloween or some
mm,
shit, but it's like there was like a genuine terror where it's like obviously he's not the biggest baddest of like villains, but for George, this guy is his Thanos. He's like this is a guy who's been picking on him his entire life. He's literally yeah, going back to Marvel, right? Yeah, it's like this guy has literally been ruining
Sorry,
his life. He's been
that's
making his life a living hell. And like he finally has the guts to like stand up to him. Like he punches him in the face and like
think,
knocks him out
McFly.
cold.
Think
Yeah,
everything should be balanced as it ought to
it's like
be.
everything comes together. It's very Edgar Wrighty. So it's like I don't know. It's great. It's awesome, and it frustrates me so much. It's like Robert Zemeckis basically made a masterpiece. Why the fuck has he not made like anything close to this?
I don't know. It is a
It's,
masterpiece. The film is excellent, and
yeah.
I have a few qualms like on like the repetition. Right? I think there are like a few awkward moments, right? Like that climactic scene where like Doc is just clumsy, right, and falls off the clock tower, right, and then has to like the tree happens and he has to like plug them back together. I felt like that was kind of manufactured
I don't know.
tension, and
Repetition was cute
yeah.
in this one. I hated it in the sequels, but again, we're gonna
We're
get
gonna
into
get
that.
there. We're
Yeah.
gonna get
So
there, right?
yeah.
And then just like that moment where it's like, oh, if you can put your mind to it, you can do everything, right? And then like there were just a couple moments
Again,
where
I
just
saw
there
nothing
was
wrong
an
with that.
on the
Yeah.
nose kind of like parallel, right? That and then honestly the biggest thing was just like the side characters, like just the parents, just all like I feel like their characters like they did change a lot and like they're like it was interesting to see that
And
change.
they were funny.
Um, and they were
Their
funny. They were
performances.
funny. They were well performed. But at the end of the day, when you get to the writing, it's really fucking stupid, right? Like all the representations of teenage
But
femininity, just like
again,
the really one-dimensional
that's the
nature.
point. It all comes together. It's all a meme.
You're
It's
you're
supposed to be like
you're
that.
saying it's supposed to be goofy and supposed to be silly, but like all the technical elements are amazing. Like I don't know. I
Well,
feel like
just
I could
because a
demand a
movie is
higher thing of
goofy and cheesy doesn't mean it can't have sophisticated filmmaking. Like again, I don't mean to keep. Let me try a different example. Like Indiana Jones. Like Indiana Jones is in of its core very goofy and over the top, but but it doesn't mean it sacrifices or throws away sophisticated filmmaking. It doesn't like wipe its ass with like shitty writing. It has great writing. It has
I
sophisticated
mean, but I
filmmaking.
feel like
Has a
it's
great
shitty writing,
director. It's like
right? Like I feel like the fact
with
that
this, I don't think so.
the Lorraine's character arc is predicated off of who she wants to have sex with,
I
right? Or
mean,
the fact
okay,
that
again,
like I just
that's
or the fact like the fact that Marty, while maybe there's some cool like cultural things where I was a high schooler and I relate to some of these things, right? But at the end of the day, he still doesn't kind of change or say mean anything. Or Doc is just this mad scientist tropey guy who is well performed and funny, just like
I
everyone
feel
else in
like
this
Marty
movie,
comes to terms with
right?
himself a
Like,
little bit,
I mean,
right?
like he has the confidence to perform in the musical concert during the dance, but like I didn't see him evolve. You know, maybe he's more confident, but like what am I supposed to take from that? You know,
I mean, but
like I
sometimes a small thing, like in of itself, like makes a big change. Like all George really needed was a little confidence, and look at him. Like he's basically like
it's
fucking
on top of the
superstar
world.
rock dad, yeah. And like his high school bullies, like basically his bitch. So it's like, you know,
I mean,
and I
like
think
again,
like the
it's
same thing
that's
could
my whole
happen to
point. It's
Marty. It's just a
simplistic,
little confidence it
right? It's
needs, yeah.
simplistic.
And I think
I
simplicity's fine. I don't mind anything being super deep and complex. Like sometimes it's
did you listen to the Marvel discussion? I don't know, like like these Marvel movies, they have to push the limits and
yeah,
they're
but
not
the
doing
Marvel
anything
movies don't have
interesting, right?
sophisticated
I
filmmaking.
mean,
They're just the
I
same
think they
shit with the
do.
same cinematography, the same like style and tone. It's like it's all bland and boring. Like this, there's an actual personality behind the filmmaking. Like there was genuine love and passion put
Okay,
into
okay.
something
So
like
so
this.
maybe
So
a better
yeah.
comparison then. You keep invoking Edgar Wright. Let's talk about Edgar Wright.
Okay,
Right? Like
yeah.
the Cornetto trilogy, right?
Yeah,
Like
great movies.
the
Probably my
writing
favorite
is
film
fucking
trilogy.
sophisticated, right? Like the
Yeah,
character changes while they're funny, they're also like they're really cool, right? Like the
I also
world's
thought the
end,
writing
right?
and I in the same way that the writing in the Cornetto trilogy is sophisticated, I thought the writing in Back to the Future was also
I
sophisticated.
mean,
It's corny
but
and
like I feel
goofy
like
for
the
sure, but that doesn't
character
mean
like
it's not sophisticated. It's not doesn't mean it's not complex. It's just simple. It's simple within its complexity. Its complexity is its simplicity. Do you understand what I'm saying?
it's okay. Did you smoke something? I don't know. I just thought that was funny. Like no, I get. I mean, like at the end of the day, I think that you're right. Stellar technical like performances and or stellar technical elements, amazing performances, awesome comedy, right? It's really resonant. It's really resonant from a cultural perspective, right? We've all been high school students, right? We all know that struggle, right? And relating to our parents, right? I mean, that's why maybe Marty has some compelling traits as a character. But at the end of the day, I feel like there are some weaknesses with the writing, right? Like I feel like the character work could be tighter, right? Like with Lorraine, with George, with Marty. Like I would have loved to see a little bit more personality from Marty aside from just being Mr. Cool Guy who can like run everywhere, right? And inspire others. And just I would have liked to have seen a little bit more evolution. Right. And maybe this is just me being film snobby. Maybe this is me like importing the things I was taught in high school English about how characters need to change and how that needs to link back to like thematic messages. Maybe I'm the snob of this conversation, but I feel like it stops me from calling it a perfect movie. So I was debating for a while about whether or not it's a 9.5 or 10. I was gonna peg it like it's somewhere in the middle for me, but it was like, where is this for me? I think it's closer to 9.5. So I'm
Okay.
gonna give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I mean,
Letterbox forces me to round up, so it's a 5 out of 5 on Letterbox. So
yeah, I
fuck
mean,
it. Yeah.
I don't disagree with like a lot of what you said. Like I think like like I've admitted about like Lorraine and like some of this other stuff. So it's like I'm not ignoring these flaws. Like I don't know. I just think that the pros definitely outweigh what little cons there are in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's
but
why.
yeah, in terms of final thoughts, I mean, if you've listened to my conversation, it's pretty obvious that I love it. I mean, is this because I have nostalgic goggles when I'm looking at this? Sure, but like at the same time, you can't deny how well made the film is. Like it's a goofy, over the top time traveling adventure made with smart writing, with great performances, with impeccable directing. It's like it creates this great balance between being like intelligent and complex enough like for the sake of like artistic purposes, but like approachable and mainstream enough for it to be enjoyed by everyone. It's like you said, it's not like a Whiplash or a Birdman where it's like, yeah, this is great, but like I feel like only certain groups of people will like enjoy shit like that. It's like it strikes that great balance, and I think the best films can do that. It's why I love the Cornetto trilogy so much. Like the Cornetto trilogy manages to be both mainstream and like smart and intelligent. So, but I mean, I guess you disagree, but that's just me. But yeah, anyway, 10 out of 10, one of my favorite movies of all time. What little flaws I have are just not enough for me to like bump this down in any way. And yeah, I love it. So yeah, okay, great. Yeah, you want to jump into the sequels
It's
now
a great
or
movie. Yes, so let's talk about the other two.
the other two?
The other two.
We
Yeah,
make it
so
sound like they're bad movies, but they're
they're
really not.
they're
It's
not
just
bad
that like
movies,
it's just
but
like when you've seen the best one, it's like how could you possibly like sit through these two?
exactly. I mean, they're both enjoyable watches. I mean, I watched them back to back. I liked them.
Mm.
I
Do you want to
guess
introduce part two or
I'll
should
introduce
I?
part two.
Okay.
I think what we should do is we should explain both movies, right? Because I don't think you can. So maybe for some background, like I think part two came out in 1989. Part or no 1989.
Yeah,
Part three came out in 1990.
they were filming both
Essentially,
at the same time.
essentially what
Yeah.
they pulled the Lord of the Rings, or maybe a Lord of the Rings pulled the Back to the Future parts one and parts two and three, and they filmed them together and then released them 7 months apart, in the summer and then in the next summer or something like that.
Yeah. At the end of
Um,
Back to the Future Part Two, there is a literal to be continued, and then like up next in the next episode of Back to the
and
Future
you get
Part
all
Three.
see all
Yeah.
these scenes, right? Like it's these movies are really intimately connected, right? And they like the Back to the first Back to the Future movie like wasn't written with an intended sequel. Like there are literally like the end of the first Back to the Future like forces them to pick up, and like Jennifer has to be in there, and like they have to involve the kids, right? In
Yeah,
the plot
I,
of the
I I
sequel,
did
right?
some research, and apparently, like Zemeckis, like when he agreed to do the sequel, he actually hated the fact that he ended the first film that way
Yes,
because it's like, yeah, it's
yes,
like you said, he had to force Jennifer into like the second. That's why she's basically like unconscious for
yeah.
like what the first like
And then
20 to
also
30
I
minutes
think
of
the
the
kids
film.
were in
Yeah,
these movies. But before we get into how that affects like the structure, we want to talk about these movies together, both because they do pale in comparison to the first one, but there's some debate about which one is like they're very different for reasons we'll talk about.
yeah.
And it's interesting to discuss like why which one we prefer as a better sequel or more representative of a continuation of the first one. So before we get into that, let me just a little bit of background. I'll tell parts two and then parts three. So part two picks up like basically essentially where part one left off, right? Part one's like Doc from 1980s Doc goes back in time and is like, Marty, I need your help. You've got a problem with the kids. And so the film follows like Marty and Doc as they travel from 1985 to 2015, to prevent Marty's son from sabotaging his family's future, right? When Biff Tannen like steals Doc's
Mhm.
DeLorean in 2015, goes back in time to like give him a sports almanac, give his younger self a sports almanac, which he uses to become rich and powerful, and essentially like completely alter the timeline, make
The
a
Biff
dystopian. It's
1985
Biff World or
timeline. Yeah.
whatever the like
Hmm.
Biff's Hotel or something. He was a crime boss, and it was and so the whole plot of the movies just yeah, yeah, in the 1985 timeline, the whole plot of the movie is him trying to get the sports almanac back from the younger Biff to stop this other timeline. It's interesting. So part three, after they do get the sports almanac back and they learn things and it's a really convoluted plot. Part three is really different. It's a western. right? It continues immediately, and essentially at the end of part two, Marty is stranded in 1955, and so in order to get back to the future again, he has to he enlists the help of the 1955 doc to go back in time, to the no that he to
We're getting into
essentially,
part
so
three now,
what
by the
happened
way.
at the
Yeah.
end. So I'm getting into part three. This is all going to be confusing. Sorry. They enlist the help of the 1955 doc to use the DeLorean that the 1985 doc, who is
1885. Yeah.
trapped in the 1885, 1885, and then ages, and then the DeLorean is still in 1955, uses that DeLorean to go back in time to 1955 to rescue the 1985 doc and then go back to the future. But then they don't, because he falls in love with the character named Claire Clayton. See, this convolution, right, is part of the reason why these movies are much weaker, right? I think at a plot level, right, I have deep reservations about like how it feels and how confusing it is and how fun of a watch it is. I for one, I'll put my cards on the table. I like part three better than part two, right? Because I think part three kind of loses a lot of these convolutions, that make the second part really confusing and really weird and
Yeah, and
just
it
like
doesn't help
I'm
that
gonna
they were
go
both
all
filmed
over
back to
and
back.
yeah.
Like, while
Mhm.
Zemeckis was editing part two, he was directing part three. So it's like I can't imagine how much like shit and stress he had to go through.
It's like,
Um,
you're so stressful with a podcast and a public affairs internship at the
yeah.
Department of Defense. Like, imagine directing two movies at once.
Yeah, really
Or
just
editing and
like,
directing.
yeah. But yeah, go so the reason why we're kind of putting these together, because it's like we can't really talk about one without the other, because they're basically just one whole movie that's just
Mhm.
broken apart into like two parts.
It's like
And
Harry Potter part one and two.
yeah, but like unlike that, this was like actually necessary to break apart.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I am more on the fence about this. Because I rated part two and part three the same, because I think they're this. I think not that because like they're the exact same, but it's just that like I think one does better than the other, and the other does something better than like the first one.
They
If that
have
makes
different
sense.
strengths.
Yeah,
They
they
have
have
different
different
strengths and
strengths
different
and
weaknesses
weaknesses.
that,
Like
yeah.
in my opinion, part two, like the first hour of the film, I personally really enjoyed. I really was interested in like
See, I'm the opposite. I
invested with the
disliked it a
first
lot.
hour of film, but it's not. But when they go back to 1955, that's when the movie loses me. It's like, okay, so now we're getting into
It's the
like
exact opposite for me. I liked that
we're
part. I
getting
didn't
into
like the
like
first half.
Force
Yeah.
Awakens, Last Crusades of things of like, oh, you remember this? Well, we're doing that again, but this time in different context and stuff like that. It's like that's when the movie just like made me lose interest, and it was kind of the opposite with part three, because like I was actually bored for like the first like 45 minutes, an hour of part three, because it's like it's just like bullshit western stuff that I really don't care about. And I don't the film for me doesn't really get interesting until like Marty throws like a pie tin at like Mad Dog, and he's like, I challenge you to a gunfight because I'm the Dirty Dan or whatever. It's like the movie doesn't get interesting until after that moment happens. And so yeah, so it's like this weird thing where it's like in Back to the Future Part Two, I like the first half, but I don't like the second half. But in Part Three, I don't like the first half, but I like the second half. Like I think the train sequence in Part Three is awesome. I just wish the rest of the movie was as interesting as that. But
See, I don't know.
yeah.
I'll start my response with
And I guess
what
for
I
like for
think
the sake
is.
of this segment, like if I had to take a side, I guess like my gut tells me I prefer part two to three. So I guess like that's
So we have to
yeah.
manufacture
We
podcast
have to
tension. There must be
create fake
disagreements.
conflicts in this dumbass
Exactly.
podcast.
Our YouTube channel.
Sure, whatever.
Um,
Yeah.
like I don't know. So for me, I'll frame, like, I think the rest of what I'll say with this. It comes down to what I think is the better spiritual successor to the first one, right? And I think the first one had a lot of strengths in just how contained of a narrative was. It was a time travel movie that at the end of the day was about like Marty relating to his parents,
Yeah,
right?
and it
And
didn't
and
feel
their
convoluted at all.
progressions.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think for me, part three, I think picks up with that feel a little better, right? Because it's about like Marty's relationship with Doc and how he likes Doc and he's gonna like go back in time to rescue him and how he really wants to be with him, and then Doc actually like changes as a character and ends up like exploring a different facet of himself because he falls in love with
I
someone,
think that's the
right, who
one
he can
thing.
relate to,
Yeah,
right?
I think
Yeah.
that's the one thing part three does very well. It's like this is the movie where Doc is the most interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I mean, he's
Mm-hmm.
already the most interesting character, but he he becomes interesting in a different way where it's like he's actually like developing as a character. He falls in love with Mary Steenburgen's character, Clara Clayton or whatever the fuck her name is, and like I don't like her character, to be honest. Like she's not interesting in the slightest. She's like more boring like Lorraine, but I don't know, but like, but her presence like gives him like motivation to change and develop as a person. I will give you credit, like that's where part three definitely
See, and
overpowers
also
part two. So yeah,
I also think that the villain is more interesting, right? Like
I don't
I think the second
agree.
half of
He was
part
just Cowboy
two, like,
Biff.
I mean, it was Cowboy Biff, but like we were talking about in the first Back to the Future, how like the one dimensional villainy, right, was cool, right? Like
I don't
I
think
thought that
Cowboy
Mad
Biff was
Dog
like
was,
that different from like Crime Lord Biff. They were just the same, in my opinion. They were
I
not
don't
that
know,
different from one another.
I thought that it was funny, you know. I also liked how it was a Western, right? I haven't seen too many Westerns. I've been meaning to watch the Dollar trilogies. So fucking long right now.
Yeah, admittedly,
Um,
I'm not like a huge fan of westerns. Like I recently saw Once Upon a Time in the West. I thought it was so fucking boring. I just
really,
it was
I've started so many recommendations of Once Upon a
I
Time in the
barely
West,
stood
dude.
awake like during this like the second act of that film. It was so boring.
I don't know, like
Yeah.
I just I thought that that one-dimensional kind of villain worked because in the same way as the superhero genre in modern film does, it poses these moral binaries between like the good like the good heart of gold outlaw versus the bad villain outlaw in westerns, right? I mean, I also thought it was kind of
I mean,
funny,
not
you
to
know,
like
are you yellow? Are
yeah.
you yellow? It's like, are you chicken? I thought that was weird. But like,
Yeah, where did that
I
joke
like
come
back.
from? It's like that wasn't in the first
No
movie, so
fucking
I don't know
idea.
why that was in the
I have
second and
no
third movie.
I have no fucking idea. That was so weird. But I thought part three like had good characters. It was less confusing, right? Like it's really structurally similar to the first one where he's trying to convince Doc to like come back with them, and he's doing all these things to in the past
I
to
don't.
work towards getting back to the future. Like
Uh-huh.
and it didn't go to the future, so it didn't have to like make all these predictions, and so we don't get bogged down in, oh, we don't have our hoverboards in 2015 and like all these weird space
Well,
costumes. Like
I don't
we haven't talked.
prefer I don't slightly prefer part two because of that. That's just like extra shit I don't care about. I is part three less convoluted than part two? Like, sure, I'll admit that, but like I didn't think three was so convoluted that it didn't make any fucking sense. Like it was still
You mean two?
sorry, yeah, two. Like I didn't think two was like that confusing. Like it was still consistent whether it's going. It's like they go to the future and old Biff gives young Biff the almanac and it creates this like dystopian 1985. So it's like they have to like do another wacky adventure to like save the future, to save like all of time. It's like it wasn't that convoluted. Like yeah, they jumped back and forth between timelines. It's like, but it's like it felt consistent. It like I was never like confused the entire time. I understood what was going on. It was just stupid sometimes. And again, yes, it's Back to the Future, but like but like I think the biggest thing for me as to why I prefer part two over three is just like I felt like part two there was more something at stake. Like there was some kind of overarching plot that was like actually like threatening the characters and like actually motivated them to like fucking do something. It's like the almanac basically ruined Doc and Marty's life. Like Marty's like stepdad is now fucking Biff, and like Doc is apparently like stuck in a mental asylum. And they have motivation, they have reason to like change the past and like fix the future and like stop Biff from getting his hands on the
I mean,
almanac.
like there
But
are
in part three, like
stakes,
Dick doesn't
right? There are stakes,
but
but I
yeah,
feel like that violates the spirit of like the Back to the Future movies.
not
I mean,
really. The
it's not
first
about.
film had stakes.
I mean,
Like Marty's existence was at stake. Like
I mean,
if he
like,
didn't go
but
back
like
in time and
that
save his
that comes
yeah, his
down to the
parents'
character.
marriage. Yeah.
right? Like it comes down to his character. Like we care about Marty because we've grown familiar with him for the last hour and a half. Right? Like we like what happened was there was like a butterfly effect, like apocalyptic dystopia, right? Like it's very different in how this film is trying to be like compelling,
I don't
right?
know, like
Like for me, like my biggest issue is really the first half of part two, right? Like
you didn't like
I
any of the
really
2015 stuff.
I didn't like the 2015. Like I thought the set design was interesting. Like
I thought
all
it
the
was
old
cute.
people
I kind of
makeup
liked it.
was
Yeah,
stupid.
I thought the Cafe
Griff
80s.
Tannen,
I got
like
yeah, the Cafe
Griff
80s
Tannen.
stuff was like kind of funny. I kind of thought it was
I don't know, I
cute.
just thought it was
Yeah,
off-putting, like where the TV is just like broken and there's like Reagan weird looking shit. Like, and then Griff Tannen is like you have this like space like punk like all this gaudy
he's cyborg
costuming
Biff.
and yeah, cyborg Biff, and he just like grows in size and he's like he's like all he turn all the parts of Biff that like were borderline like annoying in the first one where he's like overly gesticulatory and really mad and really loud and complainy and like that is Griff,
I
right?
was
And it's just like this is so
framed.
yeah, I was framed. It's like go get him. It was just like not Manor. I thought that was stupid, right? And just also the kids, right? Like Jennifer's
Oh
there
God, they
and
were awful. They were
Marty is like a higher
awful.
pitched version of I was just like, why? I don't know. I don't understand. Like, I remember like in 2015, like all of this conversation about Back to the Future, and I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. So I don't really remember what was going on. But I thought it was silly. I just thought it was all silly, and there's nothing interesting from a character-wise perspective. It's just like we have to go like stop this, get this MacGuffin as a MacGuffin quest. There wasn't anything interesting about like the characters that were going on. I mean, like, but then that kind of changed in the second half. But I like the second half better.
Really,
So
because
I didn't like the first half
yeah,
part two. Yeah.
I disagree with you. Like I thought the second half actually like bothered me. Like it made me cringe because it's like it was so. I felt like the fact that they had like Marty was like, Doc, you can't believe it. We got to go back to 1955. It's like, oh my god. It's like I felt like that was so pandering. It was like, remember this in the first film? Well, we're gonna do that again because that was what made it successful, and that's what you
There've
guys
been a couple
remember.
movies now that we've talked
No,
about where like
it's
they
like
have done
they
this
did
and you
this
haven't
in
liked it.
the
Yeah.
Last Crusade. They did this in the Force Awakens. They
Predestination,
did this
Avengers
in fucking
Endgame.
everything. It's like God, and they didn't need to do that because they had enough shit that was interesting and unique. Like that's why I prefer the first half. Like they go to 2015 and like they see all this like basically weird
My thing
futuristic shit, and then there was the alternate 1985 where Biff rules the world. It's like all that was interesting. I was more interested in that. Let's explore
I
that.
liked
Yeah.
the alternate 1985. I mean, like the alternate 1985, like you actually have the elements of where Biff is like this abusive and powerful character and like it builds off of his tyranny. Like I thought that like the Biff is this the stepdad and you have some of the Lorraine like drawing from the first Back to the Future movie and how she relates to her husband, right? And Biff is this powerful character who has this will to power and always really wants to be like he's finally recognized because he's rich.
Yeah, it's this horrifying fucked
Yeah.
up reality.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like
thought
that's
that
what I
was
liked about
fine.
it. It's
Yeah.
like the worst common denominator
I thought that was
scenario.
fun. Actually,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that just like plays off of Wilson's performance. At the end of the day, I think that's just why it's really. I thought it was good. But for me, why I like the second half is I think it. Well, it does ride and get some mileage from those really compelling scenes from the first one. I do like seeing the same scenes, like technically reconstructed and done from a different perspective, and I thought that was cool. But also, you get to experience more with Biff, right? You get to see him like in his insecurities and his grandmother, right? And his like fixing his car, right? And why he's like pining after Lorraine a little bit. Like I feel like you get a little bit of characterization there, right? Kind of interwoven
I
with
don't know.
everything.
I
And I
felt like
liked
I
it.
already saw stuff like this in the first one. Like, I mean, I didn't need to know that like his Biff's grandmother is like a total jerk or anything like that. It's like I didn't need to know any of that. It's like regardless of his motivation, it doesn't change. Like Biff is an asshole. He's like this piece of shit bully that's like ruining George McFly and the rest of the McFly's life. It's like it's all this extra like backstory where it's like, I mean, yeah, it adds some extra context, but it doesn't change anything. It's like it doesn't change how I view Biff. It's like it doesn't make me suddenly sympathetic towards him or anything. So it's like, I don't know. It's like if adding this extra backstory perspective to Biff is like
I mean, I don't think it was
supposed to make
solely
me
that.
change my
Did you
perspective
not
on him,
when
it didn't do
when
that at
Marty
all. So yeah.
goes and that's actually I think the first. Oh no, that's the beginning of part 3. I was like when
Wait,
Marty
what
is
are you
stuck
talking
back
about?
in 1955, and then you see the scene at the end, like again where he escapes with a, yeah, he runs a
When he
dock and
runs
Doc's
the
like, what the
dock and he's like,
fuck?
Doc,
Yeah.
yes, but I'm back from the
Like I thought that was
future.
good. Like I like
I liked that too. Yeah, I liked it
I
too.
loved it was really interesting, like when Marty's trying to evade the gang, right, and evade Biff, right, and is like hiding in the back of the car trying to reach the almanac and Strickland's office, and his hand gets crushed, and he climbs over the stage and drops the sandbags on the gang. Like I just thought that was really technically interesting and fun. Like it was fun action, fun stakes, from fun tension. That road that got us to see these same scenes that we really liked from a new angle. Right, we saw it from the top. Like yeah.
But why couldn't this just yeah, I mean, like, yeah, like individually that's interesting, but it's like, why couldn't that just have been in a different scene? Like, why was this specifically chosen to be in 1955 during this specific moment, other than, money and like, oh, people will recognize this because this was in the first Back to the Future. Like, why couldn't this be in like 1947 or 1958 or something like that? It's like, no, it's like, but no, it's like,
You think
why does
it
it have
feels
to be this
forced to you.
specific
It feels
moment? Like,
forced to
yes,
you.
yeah, it feels forced. It's like there's no real reason for this film to go back to
I mean, like,
1955
yeah, I
other
mean
than,
that's
it was
my
great in the
deepest
first one, so let's do
reservation
it
about this
again.
film.
So,
It's all plot heavy, right? It's like, oh, I feel yeah,
yeah,
I
that's
have to go back
also,
in time now
yeah.
because I have to stop my kid from going to jail. And it's like, okay, like Marty needs to be there, and then the fact that
By the way, I did not realize his daughter was also like Michael J. Fox. I did not
it's
realize
just
that at
silly.
all.
Like it's just silly. Like it just and like so the setup is like it's forced because like I have to involve the kids because of that one-off line from Doc at the end of part 1, and like in the fact that I that Doc felt that for some reason that it's so important, like and Doc felt it was so important that like Marty come to the future to stop him from going to jail, to stop this woman. Are you in or out? And then the repercussions of that are like he gets a sports almanac and then a butterflies effect into this like really convoluted time travel action heavy thing like that. It's really plot heavy, and the characters don't change. I don't know what's supposed to mean, and it feels really manufactured. Like this is why I don't like part 2 as much,
I don't know,
right?
but I
Like
felt like
no,
the
you have
plot in part 3 was
yeah.
just as like fake and like orchestrated as like the second one. But like the second one at least had the decency to be fun and interesting. Like this jump from the future to dystopian 1985 to like, I mean, the parts that were kind of fun in 1955, like it had like the plot was like basically it was definitely like more convoluted and crazy in the second one, but at least it had the decency to be fun and interesting. Like part 3 wasn't like the first. I was so bored for the first like hour of part 3. It was just like Western shit combined with like more annoying callbacks to like part 1. It's like McFly, mom, oh man, I had a crazy dream, blah blah blah. It's like, hey McFly, and it's like, and that's like the big thing too. I hated the callbacks and like the sequels. It's like I don't know if this wasn't done on purpose or like Zemeckis thought it was funny, but it's like I cringed every time they like recurred like some fucking gag from like either the first or like the rest of the series. It's like the Hey McFlies, the fucking skateboard related scenes, the nightmare, and
I
it's like
dislike that in like the
it was cute. It was
first
cute in the
scene or the
first movie
first
because,
movie.
like I said,
So
it was very Edgar Wrighty. It just got on my nerves in the second and third one, where it's like they only just did it because it was they did in the first one, so let's fucking do it again in 2 and 3. It's like there was purpose behind the callbacks in part 1, but in 2 and 3 they just did it because fuck it, why not? So
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know if like the purposefulness in part 1 really executes itself. Like, but we had that discussion, and I also like agree. I think like, oh, we're gonna have the same pink like hoverboard that shows up in part 2 be involved in the climactic scene of part
See, that
3.
was one
Like
of the few
I
good
I
callbacks. I was like,
I thought it was well
yeah,
executed. But I agree. I think this is structurally why both of these sequels are weaker than the original, right? Like it feels like it's trying to live up to the first movie without doing its own thing. Like the second part is like all bogged down, like in the second half, and going back to the past, right, and re litigating these old scenes that were cool from the first movie. The first half, like is trying to like fill this writing hole of like some lines of the end of the
yeah,
first movie.
I agree. It's like they were so
I don't know.
concerned with recreating part one that they forgot to create their own identities. It's like I don't
Mm-hmm.
care about like callbacks and Easter eggs to the first. I mean, like one or two is fine, but it's like if I wanted callbacks to the first movie, I just watch the fucking first movie again. Like stop
Mm-hmm.
referencing it. Like be your own thing. It's like a great sequel, something like Empire Strikes Back. Like Empire Strikes Back is a great movie, not because it like just did A New Hope again. It's like it took the core concept of A New Hope and then like expanded upon it and like introduced new ideas to build the universe, like make it even bigger, like introducing stuff like Hoth and Yoda and like Boba Fett and all that stuff. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I think part 2 and 3 needed something like that, and I think to admit, I think part 2 and 3 definitely do introduce like those kinds of things, like 2015 or the dystopian Biff era or like the Old West.
Dystopian Biff era.
it's not enough
Yeah.
because like again, they keep making these like references and callbacks to the first film. They keep like making these like, remember this? Well, here it is again because why not? It's like I think they were just so focused on like recreating the success of the first film that they forgot to be their own movies in 2 and 3, you know?
Yep. Yep. And they're weaker for it.
Yeah.
So
I want
I
to
guess
talk
maybe to
I
put a
want to
wrap
talk a
on
little bit
this.
more about part 3 because I feel like
Okay.
we've focused a lot on part 2, which is fine. But
It's because I have more deeper criticisms of
I
part
think
2.
yeah,
But
but
yeah,
again,
Chris
like
has a
I
way.
think part 3, I swear to God, like the first hour of this film, straight up nothing happens. It's like I was so bored. I was like, let's just get this going. Like I get it. You're trying to find like I the I swear to God, when they went to the bar scene where like Marty's like, I need water or whatever, and it's like, hey, McFly. And then when he like danced in front of them, I was like, I swear to God, if you ride another fucking skateboard in this scene, I'm going to fucking lose it. Like, thank God he doesn't, but it's like, nonetheless, it still plays out the same. But like, the movie just does nothing happens. It's like he goes to a farm and then meets
I will
Doc and they dick
say
around in like a lab the entire time. It's like nothing happens. I just want something to
like
happen.
like Doc is literally like for a good chunk of the film literally just working on the DeLorean because the plot needs him to like not be involved.
Yeah.
Right, he's just working on the DeLorean, and there are multiple scenes where like he's talking to Marty, right, and he's just working on the DeLorean. Like I will say that I like part 3 better because it is actually feels more grounded, feels more the characters are stronger
I
to
feel like it's a
me,
little
right, the
too
narrative,
grounded.
like
Like it doesn't have that like wacky charm of like the first film. Instead, it's like this boring western, but it doesn't even have the decency to be a fun
yeah,
western with
like
like gunslingers and
I will
stuff. Yeah.
say that like the first half is slow. I mean, when I think about what things were interesting to me, it was the scenes with Clara where they're dancing and they meet, or where they're trying to get to the
Did you like
train. And
Clara? Because like I thought she was just a more boring version of Lorraine. Like I didn't. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, like I I have issues with Lorraine from the first movie, and from the
But she
second
at least has a
movie.
personality.
Um,
Like Clara, I don't think has any
I mean,
personality. Yeah.
Clara, I feel like has emotional resonance with Doc, right? She's a teacher. She likes the sciences. She's misunderstood, right? And that's part of her attraction to Doc, right? Because Doc is the same, but a little bit more extreme,
I don't
right?
know,
I
but
mean,
wouldn't it
this
be more?
you're right. She's weak. I mean, she doesn't really do anything. Um, of her own volition, of her own agency, aside from like over here on the train that like this guy was really dejected about her. So I actually
I
love
mean,
dogs. I'm gonna
okay,
go
look,
climb the whole fucking
I'm not like
train.
a love
Like,
doctor or
yeah.
anything. Like I don't know the first thing about matchmaking, but like I don't know. What I found interesting between George and Lorraine is that like they're two completely different people. Like they have completely
Yeah, they
different.
are George and
Yeah, they
Lorraine.
have completely
Yeah, they're
different
not. Yeah.
personalities, but like they nonetheless their chemistry is still great. But it's like you just have Doc and then you
Eh.
have female Doc. It's like I don't know, that in of itself is
I
less
mean, she's
interesting
not
to me.
female
But in a
Doc. I
way
mean,
she kind of
I don't know.
is. In a
You're
way she
right.
kind of
She's
is.
not a strong character of her own right.
Yeah.
But at least she's a character and she provokes change. And the two protagonists have been following for 3 films. None of that happened in part 2, right? And just I would prefer like bad like some like I guess maybe mediocre story to like plot heavy bullshit, right? Which was
I don't know,
awkward a
but the
lot and
plot
had
heavy
unnecessary
bullshit
callbacks.
was
Like,
charming. It's like it was at least interesting. I was like
see, I
I
feel
was
like this is
invested.
nostalgia
Yeah.
goggles, just a little
Maybe
bit, just a
maybe
little
this is
bit.
what
But
this is.
I don't know. Like
I
both
don't
of
know,
these
but I
films are
have nostalgia
weaker.
for part 3, but I'm admitting like the first hour of part 3 was boring. Like the train sequence was literally awesome. That was like that's why I don't think part 3 is worthless. Like that train sequence where it's like they're trying to push the DeLorean and they're like throwing like
Mm-hmm.
fire color thingies to like make it go faster, but like Clara like wants to be with Doc, so they have that tension too, and they have the hoverboard. It's like this is awesome. Like this is what I remember like loving about Back to the Future. I just wish this was like more of the movie. And instead, like half of this movie is just boring Western shit I didn't care about. You know, it's like I wish more of the movie was like the trade sequence or like that final showdown between like, you know, Mad Dog Dirty Dan Tannen and Clint Marty McFly Eastwood, where it's like he does like the
That
bullet
was
vest
funny.
thing and he like
Yeah.
punches him and he like falls down in the manure like thingy or whatever. It's like that was fun. I liked all of that. Why wasn't that the entire movie? I'm so confused, you know?
Like you're right. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think on these moments as being what I took away from the third part, right? But being frank, I enjoyed all of those moments more than I think I did anything from part 2,
Really?
right? I mean, I love dystopian
You
Biff,
really
right? I
didn't like
love the kind of
2015, did
callback
you?
scenes. I didn't. I
You
just
didn't
thought it
think it was
was
cute or
it was
like charming?
campy. I mean, no, it was campy and gaudy and
Jaws
really
36
weirdly
or whatever it
acted.
was called.
Like, I mean, it's just like bit like Griff Tannen's over the top. Like Marty McFly Jr. is just like Marty McFly with a higher pitched, annoying voice and wimpy, right? Like I don't know. I mean, and then Jennifer's there and Doc is doing
Oh yeah,
something. I
Jennifer's
don't
a
know.
worthless
I
character. I will admit that. Yeah.
I didn't take much from part 2, right?
Mhm.
And the moments that you're talking about in part 3 are the things that I most enjoy. And yes, the first half of part 3 is weaker than the second half, but I think the sum package of part 3 is better in my mind, maybe from what I
And
look for
maybe this is
film
like a
to my taste than
personal
part 2.
preference thing, but why the fuck
Yeah.
did Robert Zemeckis not hire more people to play both Biff's and Marty's ancestors? Like, did we seriously need Michael J. Fox to play not only Marty's kids, but also Marty's like what fucking great grandfather? He's like Marty McFly but Irish, and like Leah Thompson plays
Oh, I forgot about
yeah, and
Seamus.
plays like Seamus McFly's like wife or whatever. I'm like, does Zemeckis not know any other actor?
I
Like,
think
can't he
Seamus
just like
McFly was a
no,
different
that was Marty.
actress.
Yeah, that was
What?
Marty. Yeah.
What? Are
Yeah,
you
look it up.
kidding? What the fuck? Okay, hold on. Marty McFly, Seamus McFly, wife, actress.
Well, the wife was definitely Leah Thompson. I know that for sure.
Oh, I thought you said the wife was Marty.
No, I said no. Seamus McFly was Marty, and Seamus's wife was Leah Thompson.
Oh, I mean, I knew Seamus was Marty, like, or was Michael J. Fox. Like,
Yeah.
okay. I don't know. Like, I think that was all weird and unnecessary.
Yeah, so did
I
I.
don't know
I don't
why
know why they
Seamus was in the
I
film.
mean, because we
Yeah,
need another McFly ancestor. There's a Tannen here, so there's got to be a McFly too. It's like, look,
because of these weird
guys, I
parallels,
get
right?
it.
Yeah.
There was a McFly and a Tannen, but did this seriously need to be in the fucking movie too? Like, guys, just
I mean, they didn't even know each other. Like,
yeah,
I
they
don't
don't
think
even
like
have like a
Seamus and
history. It's not like Tannen was like a fucking bully to McFly. They barely know each other. So why were they in this movie? Like, oh my god.
Exactly. Like, I don't know. Like, both of these movies I think are objectively weaker. I mean, they're fun, they're enjoyable. I'm glad I watched them. I might rewatch them in a few
Yeah,
years
they're
or
definitely
something. Like I think part 3 is the better spiritual successor because of those
well,
more
it's a
constrained
direct
story and
successor.
it's less
A spiritual
tiny. I
successor
mean,
is like
I mean,
yeah.
it's a better. It carries
I
on
think what
with
you mean
what
is
I
sequel.
think.
the best sequel. I'm just
Let me
not to be
fucking
technical, but I'm
finish.
just
Like
saying, yeah.
it carries on with the spirit of what I think is good from part
Mhm.
one better than part two did. And so I will prefer it. I'll just give my ratings. I think part three or part two. I think part two is a 3 out of 5. Or a 6 out of 10 on this podcast. I think there are weaknesses, super plot heavy. The first third is just like really weirdly acted, really gaudy, like really strange, and
You're
it's
talking
like
about part two, right?
and the fact that it's in the future. Yeah, I'm talking about
Uh-huh.
part two. I thought part three was good, had good callbacks, fun scenes where Marty was like trying to get the MacGuffin and getting to see all these cool characters and moments from part one. I did enjoy that. But part three, I think, yes, while the first half was weaker, it had just better character beats. It was more ground down to earth, less confusing, right? I felt like I actually cared about the stakes. I cared if Doc was going to make the decision between going back in the future and staying with Clara, right? Like I was intrigued by we have to get this up to 88 miles per hour using a fucking train, right? Like I thought
Yeah.
that was great. I thought
The
it was
best part
cool.
of
I
the movie,
enjoyed it
yeah.
more. So I'll give it a 3.5.
Okay. You
Yeah.
mean a 7 out of 10?
Or 7
Yeah.
out of 10.
Because like,
Letterbox is getting to
yeah.
me, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I basically agree with all of that. And like I said, like I don't strongly prefer one over the other because again, like I'm kind of on the fence on both. Like there are parts I like about part 2, um but there are also parts I like about part 3, and they both have different strengths and weaknesses. So I think this is hard because like what I want to give them objectively is different from what I personally want to give them because like I have nostalgic feelings for them. Like it might seem like I don't like these movies, but like I really do. I have nostalgic memories of them. They're just not as good as the first film, but I do think these are good movies and I have enjoyable moments with them. So like I guess like if I was being objective about them, I personally would give both of them a 6 out of 10, but for the sake
Mm.
of nostalgia and because like I just have deep love and like cherishment for this trilogy, I'll give them like a reluctant both 7 out of 10. So yeah.
I respect that. I
Mhm.
respect that. I mean, I could be persuaded a 6 or 7 for both of
Yeah.
them. I mean, it maybe be easier for me to persuade it down, like from like to 6 for both.
I mean, I don't think it's bad that
But
like I'm looking at these movies with such nostalgia. I mean, it's like I can't help it. It's like I saw these
dude, you're allowed to have childhood
yeah.
movies. I mean, this is why I like Marvel. I
Okay.
mean, like
Well,
I
yeah.
low key, I was watching Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and the first Avengers movie with
Yeah,
my
it's why
dad
I
in
still love the
theaters,
Sam
and
Raimi
that's why I like
Spider-Man
them.
trilogy. Yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. And that I think that's a
Mhm.
lot.
Okay,
So
want to get
yeah,
into
do you want to
random
move into
question
Q&A?
time? Yeah, Q&A. Yeah.
Let's keep this short.
Yeah.
Fuck,
I
we've
usually
gone
we
on
have
for a
like some
long
pretty
time.
long questions, but like we just got through a trilogy, so let's kind of keep this short. So I have the questions for this week. But
Okay.
again,
Okay.
so if you guys and that's a good segue into like how we do questions. So for those of you wondering, we're generating these questions ourselves because this is the first episode and we technically didn't really ask anyone to like make questions for us. But if you would like us to answer certain questions, if you have any questions that you would like to ask us that you want us to answer on the show, just send it over on this on when we release this episode. And when if you have any questions for us that you'd like for us to answer in the next episode, just leave a comment on the in the doobly doo in the comment section. Or if you would like to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, any of the socials, and you want to DM us, you want to message us some questions that you'd also like for us to answer, we'll gladly take those questions as well. So
Timmy needs friends,
yes, I am
guys.
lonely. I need friends.
Ask him about
Yeah.
movies. He
So
enjoys
yeah, if
it.
you have any questions you'd like for us to answer, I'll gladly take them. Or you can follow Xander and you can send in the questions for those too.
You could follow
Yeah.
me. I like
So yeah.
followers.
So yeah, ask us questions. We're more than happy to answer them. Or again, leave it in the comment section below for our next episode. So, but yeah. Anyway, so because this is our first episode, I decided to generate the questions ourselves. So, Xander, first question. So
Okay, these are new to me. I don't know what I'm being
yeah,
hit with.
so
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 yeah.
this is because
Okay.
this is
Okay.
like we talked about a trilogy. I guess this is like a good segue into our first question is like what do you think is the best, or what are your favorite movie trilogies?
Okay. My favorite movie
I mean, I feel
trilogies.
like my answers for this one are obvious, but I'm more interested in hearing your Your thoughts first,
God,
yeah.
God, I don't know. I think I'm always like I have reservations about making broad declarative statements about film because I've really only been watching movies with some intentionality for like 5 months, right? I mean, just during quarantine, we started talking, kind of like started talking up the idea of a podcast, watching
Stop
movies.
stalling for time and
Um,
answer the fucking
uh,
question.
I don't
Do
know. I don't know.
you want me to go
I
first
I
so
don't
that
know.
you can have some time to think?
Um, no, I think my answer, I don't know. I don't know. I don't
I can
fucking
answer
know. Like,
first
what are
if you
some
want.
trilogies? Hey, what are some
I mean,
trilogies? Yeah,
like
what are
I've
some
said it
trilogies?
before, like the Sam
Yeah.
Raimi trilogy, I personally love. Is it the most perfect
Okay.
trilogy? Obviously not, but like,
Part three.
no,
Love it.
yeah, great meme quality right there. But I don't know, like it's like what I get out of Back to the Future is what I get out of like at least the first two Sam Raimi films, where it's like it's goofy and like corny as hell, but like it's so stylized. It has such sophisticated filmmaking and writing. It's like you can't ignore them. But like moving past that, because I've mentioned the Sam Raimi trilogy a couple of times. I also love the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I think in terms of
Boo.
in terms of like film narrative, it's like I think that's the perfect movie trilogy. There's like a beginning, a middle, and end with Fellowship and Two Towers and Return of the King, and it's like, and it's all very consistent. Like there's no bad movie. They're all great. There's I definitely have a preference of one over some of the others, but like it's always consistent. I'm never bored. I'm genuinely interested and always on the edge of my seat. And yeah, I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And yeah, just another trilogy I'd like to give out. I also love the Cornetto trilogy. It's not like a narrative.
Damn, that was the one I was
Yeah,
thinking
well,
about
but
tossing
you
out
also have to
there.
realize that like the Cornetto trilogy are like some of my favorite movies of all time. So like I gotta just drop that in as well. Like yeah, I love
Fair.
the Cornetto trilogy so much. I think I mean Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. Like all three of these movies are like in my top 10 favorite films of all time. Like Edgar Wright just gets me as like someone who loves films. And like I think and like it's not like a narrative trilogy as in the sense of something like Lord of the Rings where it's like there's a beginning, middle, and end. It's like there are three films, but they're all connected through the directors, through the actors, through their themes, through their styles, through their parodies and comedies. It's like oh god, it's like these films were made for me. Like and I love this
Okay.
trilogy. But yeah.
Okay. See, I don't know. Like I'm like literally scrolling up and down this Empire Online, like literally 33 movie trilogies. And I'm just like, my issue with trilogies is I always feel like there are weaker ones in the trilogy
I mean, just because there are weaker
that I can't
films in the
speak to,
trilogy doesn't mean
you
it's
know?
like bad. Like I admit Spider-Man 3 is not
Yeah.
great, but like I like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just like all of these trilogies don't really resonate with me. I think Star Wars is overrated. I think like I don't like the this is probably my worst movie take, but I didn't really enjoy The Godfather Part 2, right? And I haven't seen the third one.
I
I
mean,
don't remember the Indiana Jones
I
movies
haven't
that
seen the third
well.
Godfather film either.
Um,
That's why I didn't say the Godfather trilogy. So
I think Lord of the Rings is a fucking slog to
that
watch,
is fucking
right?
blasphemy.
That is sin. I
You don't like
realize, but I just
the original Star Wars trilogy though?
I mean, I honestly, that's the one I might hang my hat on. I think The New Hope
Because I know you like
and
A New
The
Hope and
Empire Strikes Back are fucking
yeah. I
classics,
mean, I don't think
right?
Return of the
And
Jedi is
Return of the Jedi
amazing.
is
Yeah.
campy, but it's not bad, right?
I don't
So
think I
I
view Return of the Jedi the same way I view something like Spider-Man 3, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
see, I think it would have been funny if I said the Back to the Future trilogy,
I mean,
but
that's not a you don't have
um
you can say that. So, yeah.
no, I think parts two and
No
three
on
are
the
weaker.
Indiana Jones
You know what?
trilogy
Fuck
though?
it. I'm gonna say Star Wars, the
Okay,
original Star
great.
Wars trilogy. I think Star Wars is generally a little overrated. I think of the first two trilogies, only two movies are really good. Of the sequel trilogy, I really only like Force Awakens. I liked what the Return of the Jet, like the Last Jedi was trying to do, but
I
it
mean, but
didn't.
that's
I just
just that's
it
its
gets too
own
muddled
thing though.
with Rise
Like
of
I
Skywalker.
think the original
But
trilogy, yeah.
I fucking love A New Hope. Like A New Hope was innovative, right? It was really it's just a classic. I've always loved watching it. Like when I go home, and just
I think the
when I'm
I think when Toy Story
yeah,
was still a trilogy, like that would also be a pretty good answer.
yeah,
Like, but to
yeah.
be honest, I don't really consider Toy Story 4 like its own film. I considered it more as an epilogue than anything. It's like it just happens to have
Mm,
the number 4 next to it. But like, I don't know. I like the first 3 Toy Story films.
yeah, yeah. I just don't remember them that well.
Uh,
Like I don't know why, but like essentially all of the movies that I saw before I was 14. I just
You don't remember the Toy Story films at all?
I just can't. I just don't. I mean, I remember it being great. I remember really enjoying them, enjoying Pixar, but I just don't remember the movies
Kung
that
Fu
well.
Panda
So,
trilogy.
yeah,
I think it's
I did like Kung Fu Panda. We've talked about that one.
you said
Yeah, no,
one was your favorite, right? The Kung Fu.
I
Okay,
think,
yeah.
Although I could be persuaded for
Yeah,
number 3 as well.
three really.
So,
I think that's the weakest one of the.
or which one's the one with Gary
That's
Oldman?
two.
It's the Peacock. It's number
Yeah,
2.
that
Okay,
two
so
is my
2. I
favorite
can be
of the
persuaded
trilogy.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How to Train Your Dragon
yeah.
trilogy.
That's a good trilogy. Yeah, actually, I love all those movies. Maybe we should rank them.
What? How to
I don't
Train Your
know.
Dragon?
Or no, all these trilogies.
I
Like,
wouldn't.
I'd be more
Well,
comfortable
I
with
wouldn't.
a
There's still
general
some I need to see.
ranking.
Like I mean,
Maybe
I don't really want to see
the
Yeah,
Dollars
the Dollars
trilogy.
trilogy. I still need to see. I don't really want to see the Godfather Part 3, but something tells me I'll have to when I'll eventually recommend the Godfather trilogy at some point.
You're gonna recommend the trilogy, and we're gonna talk about it. Maybe that's what we should do on the show. We should just break down trilogies,
Sure.
and talk about them.
Is there
I don't
anything
know. else?
I'm sure there's more. There's the
I mean, you got all the Marvel
there's
trilogies,
the Jurassic Park trilogy, if you give a shit. So
you have Die Hard trilogy.
yeah, but does that really count? Because
So,
like there are 5 Die Hard films.
I don't know. I mean, it's on the Empire Online list, so it has to be official.
I've never seen any of the Die Hard sequels. I've only seen the first one.
Scream?
Never seen
1, 2,
Scream.
3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't either. I need to watch X-Men.
Like the first 3 X-Men films. I don't think they're amazing. Like,
what about Infernal Affairs? I've been wanting to watch the Infernal Affairs movies for a long time.
I've only seen The Departed. I've never seen like the original Hong Kong film.
Got it.
But wait, hold on. Go back to the wait. What were we talking? Sorry, no, I'm sorry. It's very
talking
long.
For too
we're
long.
tired. The
it's almost midnight where you're at, right?
Yeah, there was never mind, forget it, fuck it. I already forgot. I'm very brain dead right now. Anyway.
Okay, well let's leave it there. For you,
let's do one more question.
What are your favorite trilogies?
I already said that. Yeah.
Sure.
I already said my favorite trilogies. Did you not listen to what I said?
I just wanted to recap because
yeah,
kind of rambling.
Yeah. Fuck you. Yeah, Lord of the Rings, Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, Cornetto trilogy. Oh wait, that was what I wanted to talk about. The X-Men trilogy, like the first 3 first 2 Bryan Singer, and then X3 The Last Stand. Bad. I don't know.
Can they just not do Dark Phoenix? Is that like story
apparently it's like one of the best comic book stories ever, but like I don't know. I don't have any context behind like any of that, but like in all honesty, like because I saw the X-Men films when I grew up. Like I saw them at the same time I saw the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, but like there was something about the X-Men trilogy I was so bored with. It was like I just really didn't understand it at all. Like,
I mean, the first X-Men movie, I don't think like really lives up to like the first
just
Spider-Man
a standard
movie or
like
the
superhero movie. There was nothing particularly exceptional about it.
I mean, it's 2000, so like there's no such thing as a standard but like
X2 is apparently like the best X-Men movie. But when I saw it, it was like I don't know, it was like on the same level as the first one. I didn't really get that much out of it.
I like First Class a lot. That's not in the trilogy,
yeah,
but First Class is like the only
First Class
really
is literally like the best X-Men film, but no one.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess some people talk about it, but it's like it's not like people consider like Days of Future Past or X2 like those are the best X-Men films. But like I like
Oscar Isaac as Apocalypse.
I didn't see that movie. I gave up after.
I don't know. I thought it was fun.
I gave up after at Days of Future Past because I was like, this is way too convoluted. It's like I don't give a shit about this anymore.
And you like the second Back to the Future movie?
Yeah, but it's convoluted in a fun way. It's like this is just convoluted for the sake of
convoluted.
This is just convoluted.
Okay, ask your second question. Yeah. Ask your second question.
Yeah, and I guess my second question is like, and this ties into Robert Zemeckis. It's like besides Back to the Future, what is your favorite Robert Zemeckis film?
What else has he directed?
Forrest Gump. Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Castaway.
I need to see Castaway for a long time.
All those really creepy CG animated films like The Polar Express and Christmas Carol.
I love The Polar Express.
I hated The Polar Express.
Everyone shits on it. I thought it was.
I did not understand why kids love this so much. I was like, this is stupid as fuck.
You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to say my favorite Robert Zemeckis film, aside from the Back to the Future trilogy or any of them, is The Polar Express.
Okay, well, fuck you. Have you seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I've
It was another childhood film I saw, and I really liked it. It was another
think I
Back to the Future,
have.
but I loved it.
I think I have.
Christopher Lloyd plays Judge Doom, and his
Yes.
mission is to like exterminate all tunes and stuff like that.
And like there's acid or something, and
Yeah,
it's
he
what.
dips them in
Yeah,
acid,
yeah.
and like the guy who plays Mario in the Super Mario Brothers movie, Bob Hoskins. Yeah, like him and Roger Rabbit, they have to team up.
Yeah, I've
And
seen the
yeah,
movie. It's like long in the deep recesses of my memory from when I was like 6 or something. But
yeah, I don't know. It was like
I've
another
seen it.
childhood film that
Yeah,
I grew up
yeah.
with.
But I
And
would say,
Forrest Gump is
just to spite you, I'm
uh,
gonna say Polar Express. But I
okay.
also really like Forrest
Have you?
Gump.
Did
Yeah,
you like? Do you like Forrest
I
Gump? Have you
do.
seen Forrest
I've
Gump?
seen that
Yeah.
multiple
Okay. Yeah.
times. Run, Forrest, run. Yeah.
It was so. I don't. I can't really wrap my head around it, but it feels so like offensive. Like I can't help but feel like I feel dumb watching this, like, and not in a good way. Like I feel pandered to. Like I feel offended in some way watching Forrest Gump,
Just
but I
like listening
can't
to this
wrap my head
podcast.
around it. Why? I mean, yeah, obviously, but it's like, do you get what I'm saying? It's like something about the
Yeah.
film makes me feel fucking stupid,
I don't know. I mean,
and
maybe
like,
it's just the protagonist. I don't know. Like, I am.
well, no, I wasn't thinking about that. I was just
He
like,
like
it
intellectually
was
disabled, and
so.
I'm like gonna be canceled now. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, well, don't say that, man. But like,
yeah.
I, I don't know. It was like it was so. The thing that the problem that you had about Back to the Future 2 being so like plot heavy, where it's like shit just happens for the plot. Like that's how I felt about Forrest Gump. It's like, oh, he was in Vietnam, now he's with the Black Panthers, and now he's in a fucking fishing boat, and now he's like a football star, and now he's like
He's a
a
ping pong
co-founder of
guy, and
Apple, and
he's
now he's a ping
running,
pong.
and there's the smiley
It's
face.
like
Yeah.
there's no connection between all of this. It's just like Tom Hanks like dicking around. Like
I mean,
what the
I'd
fuck?
love to
Yeah.
like pay Tom Hanks to dick around. Like that guy can do anything, and I'll watch it. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I mean, he could. He gave a great performance. I don't think his best actor like award was unjustified. I just
Mm-hmm.
think that like the movie could have been more interesting. It was like a much better made version of like Green Book or something like that. But I don't know. That's just
Okay,
me.
on the latest Green Book reference, I think we're gonna hang it up there. I'm starting to really
Okay,
slow
great.
down.
Yeah, let's. Yeah, I'm sorry. We've been recording for like a long time,
I
so
think
it's
it's
almost
like,
midnight
yeah,
for me.
it's
So
midnight, and I
let's
think we
just
started at 8. So what the fuck?
yeah. So let's just like
Okay, so
let's just
Timmy,
end this right
what are you
now.
recommending
So
next week?
yeah. So next week I'm going even further back in the past than Marty did in the first Back to the Future film. I'm recommending a film classic. It's called
So bad.
Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, it's a Stanley Kubrick film. It's one of my personal favorite films of all time. And the reason I'm recommending it is because I actually want Xander to rewatch it, because I know he didn't particularly like this film, and I'm really hoping that in a second watch he might change his mind. Who knows?
I mean, I feel like that's the thing with Kubrick. Like, I don't want to digress about Kubrick as we need to actually fucking end this podcast. But like, I feel like most of his film, maybe with the exception of like Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut, that I've seen, need a rewatch or two to really kind of fully understand and appreciate. Like 2001, Doctor Strangelove, right? Barry Lyndon. I feel like all of these movies like will do well with a fresh set, with a not a fresh set of eyes, but retreading old ground. So I think this will be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, great. Yeah. So if you don't want to be spoiled for Doctor Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, go check it out. Watch it before we talk about it next week. And
Timmy,
yeah, that's
do you
it, I
want an
guess.
outro?
All right, great. Bye bye.